That's right, yeah, I got an agenda, and it's your money that I'm.
Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party, got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you give me, we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end.
A very, very, very good evening. Full council meeting. Watch along live. It's like I watch along the. Sometimes I watch along football games, and I'm smiling because we watch along council meetings. Oh wow! This evening's council meeting is going to be very, very interesting because we have exposed AROOJ Shah's secret plans or hidden plans. So we say hidden plans to scupper democracy in a number of ways. First of all, of course, is that she wants to reduce, under constitutional changes buried in the small print, is she wants to reduce the length of public questions. Remember, they rigged the public questions anyway by having their own mates submit them all the time. But the few times we've managed to get through, we have caused chaos. So during the course of this evening, if any of you want to submit a public question, I think you'll have to be with them for 9 a.m. tomorrow morning or immediately after the meeting ends tonight. Let me know whilst we're sitting and listening to some of, because a lot of it is drivel, and I will message you a number of questions I have in mind to ask if I was asking them. So I can do that for you, but after our experience last time, we know they've got to be in straight away. They've got to be in straight away, otherwise they will just fill them up with their own mates. Secondly, of course, is that they have increased the delegated budget. So council officers can now, after today, will be able to sign off up to £400,000, £399,999 without authorisation. That's right, they'll be able to sign off £399,999 without councillor authorisation. Why that is necessary, I have no idea. Well, I can only guess the same as you. And of course, the other thing they've got hidden at the last agenda item. The last agenda item is the signing off of a budget that has over £900 million worth of net debt for this year. So that's what's going on. Thank you for all of you for joining me. This is a free-to-air transmission. I've just put it out there. I will put the stream on and I will do my best to answer any questions you might in the live chat rather than interrupting the meeting. So the screen will be full with the council, just relaying the council meeting, and I'll try my best to answer questions. It's free to air, so please do like, please do share. And if you're able to, it's pinned at the top. Please do consider buying me a coffee, because this is what, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday. It's the 4th night in a row I am putting out a transmission. And if I'm honest with you, you've got enough content for 5 nights a week. We have comfortably enough content to put out an hour's transmission 5 nights a week, at least. The full council meeting is about to get underway. So let us get across to it and see what it is saying. No, it's playing, but there's nothing there yet. It's just saying live. I'll put it up there for you so you can see it. You don't need to see me on a full screen. So that's the screen I'm on, and I'm just waiting for the transmission to start. Good evening, Lee. Thanks for joining us. Good evening, Colin. Evening, Sheila. Well, Denise, one of the questions I'd love to ask is exactly how much they are paying in to service the 900 million in debt, just in interest payments per year. Yeah. So one of the questions I'd be interesting. I think it's not just a freedom of information. I think it should be asked in the council meeting, where AROOJ Shah, or Abdul Jabbar in this case, has to stand up and say, we have borrowed net borrowings this year, total borrowings this year of X amount, and it is costing you, the council taxpayer, X amount per year to service this debt. It's not a complicated question, is it? I think that would be a very good question for November. So if one of you would like that, just put the message up and I'll just text you it. I think that'd be a very, very good question. The meeting is supposed to start at 6 o'clock. They're very good at ending it at 10 o'clock. So we've just got a minute left And whilst we've got the minute left, I'd like to play this. To dress up right, apparently. It's time to dress up right. Well, we will see how well they are dressed up, won't we? For those of you asking me, yes, explosive news regarding Councillor Helen Bishop. I'll go through that on Sunday. I think I have all the emails, I have all the correspondence, and I don't think it's going to end well for the Lib Dems in Saddleworth as a consequence of what Helen Bishop has done, or for the Lib Dems anywhere else in the town. I honestly doubt she had sign off from either Howard Sykes or Sam Al-Hamdani to do what she did, which was trying railroad 60 councillors, mainly opposition councillors, into agreeing to some form of steering group, internal steering group, rather than supporting a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. Now, why Helen Bishop, a former youth worker, and I'm, I'd be right. I think Helen Bishop and I were friends at one point. We both worked with young people together in the same town. I have no idea. For those of you who ask me, I have no idea why she would not support a public inquiry.
Before we start the meeting, could I ask all
and
present
allow
to please treat
the
everyone in the
council,
chamber
and remember this
with
is the council who'd been
and I call on the
barefaced
Reverend
lying
Gina
about all
Hurlston
of this from the
to
outset,
begin
were her own leader,
Thank you,
Howard
Gina.
Sykes. Once the report came out, her own leader, Howard Sykes, made reference to how he'd been lied to by the council and misled by the council. That's her own leader. So why would the Liberal Democrats now want to get into bed with AROOJ
with her
Shah
11-year-old daughter
and try
who
and
has some special
attack
educational needs?
councillors
I met this mother
who
in June,
are
following her
openly
discharge from
championing
hospital,
a public inquiry?
diagnosed with a serious illness that
Let's be
limited
clear
her
here.
mobility.
3 council leaders in
She
a row,
was
including
unable
AROOJ
to
Shah,
return to live in her
when
home,
she was in a
and
constituency
so
where
they
the
were
block
both
votes
placed in
didn't
temporary
protect her,
hotel accommodation.
all lost
One room,
their seats
no cooking
on this
facilities,
issue,
and little storage.
the cover-up of the gang rape of our
I
town's
visited
children.
them in my capacity as a community
As it
chaplain,
started, or the
referred
only,
by the hospital. As an inpatient, she had been visited by a chaplain and benefited.
I'm not hearing a single
But
thing at
sadly,
my
the
end.
system around hospital chaplaincy currently means that they cannot visit patients when they're discharged, only when they're on the wards. I'm currently
And
working on a pilot scheme to change this and allow people access to chaplaincy services in the community. Because chaplaincy is more than religious care.
There we go.
It's about offering emotional and pastoral and spiritual support to enable the development of resilience, inner strength and hope around to face the future, however tough. From an officer perspective,
Well, mine's
taking a
not
couple
working. I don't
of
know if yours
weeks
is
to
working
arrange
yet.
alternative accommodation may have been a massive achievement. However, the lasting effect of being in a temporary place that cannot be called home, even for a short time, can impact the whole of one's life, particularly in children. This reflection is not meant to be a case study that details who did what and when and why, but actually
so we've
seeks
got
to
that
remind
working.
us working together
that's
in
working.
partnership with other agencies to
Okay,
get the
now
best
I've got to get the
outcome
sound
for our
working.
residents.
It was connected, so bear with me.
The positives that
Whilst
came
I,
from this family
get this fixed
situation
at my end.
was in the way that individuals came together to help. Communications in these situations is vital. Being able to share information with permission from the family, reduce duplication of resources. The council's housing department worked their magic to enable mother and daughter to move into a flat. Her local ward councillor was incredible, offering advice and also a lot of practical help. The social prescriber became her key worker, and I liaised with the church who purchased a new washer for her and paid for it to be plumbed in. I offered pastoral and emotional support by visiting and being on the end of a phone at all hours. Greater Manchester Integrated Care Partnership seeks to support people in
There you go.
localities by encouraging care providers in statutory, community, faith, voluntary, social enterprise sectors to all work together. We already do this well in Oldham, but we could get even better at doing it. The partnerships we forged during the pandemic are still there and need to expand. This model of working is relational. We need to know who our organisations are and who the proactive individuals are in our patch. We should get to know one another's capabilities.
So this is the inspirational story. I think a very, very sparse front bench. Dr. Chauhan understandably is off with his wife's illness. Harry Caffrell isn't there, and neither is Elizabeth Drogan. Very, very interesting, like rats leaving a sinking ship.
And to reassure. Together we can make a difference to our community. Megan Davis extended a traditional African proverb by writing this: "It takes a village to raise a child, and I choose to be an actively participating member of my village." The village in question is Oldham.
Was that meant to be profound or something?
Thank you, Jean. If members to wish to remove their jackets, they may do so. May I remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be streamed live on a webcast from the Council's website and by audio transmission on Oldham Community Radio.
This is going to be hilarious. It's going to be a car crash of a chair, isn't it?
That is welcoming, secure and safe for members, employees and visitors. It is important that meetings are conducted in a safe and fair manner. All persons present at the meeting should be treated with courtesy and respect. This includes members of the public, elected members, employees and visitors. Behaviours, language or actions that impact public safety, cause disruption and or adjournment to the course of the business at the meeting are not acceptable. Members of the public are asked therefore to note the public meeting protocol, which is also available on the Council website. And elected members are reminded to note the elected members protocol and of the members' code of conduct, which provides details of expected principles of behaviour. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Chauhan, Hindle, Ibrahim and Lancaster. Item 2, minutes. Is the Council agreed that the Council minutes from the meeting on the 12th of July 2022 are approved, subject to an amendment at item 9 of the minutes, page 26 of the agenda. The numbering of the resolutions after resolution 2 should read 3, 4 and so on. Are we all agreed on that? Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest from members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting? Can members declare any matters to the meeting?
Okay, so he's turned the mic off whilst that's going to play now.
Are there any items of urgent business? There are no items of urgent business. Item 5, communications. Council will be aware that the Mayor is not present today. I call on Councillor Shah to speak.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I've agreed with the other 4 group leaders to give an update on behalf of our Mayor, Councillor Dr Zahid Chauhan, and send our well wishes to both him and his wife Afshin. Members in this chamber will be aware that Zahid's wife and our mayoress, Afshin, has been diagnosed with a serious illness in recent weeks. As a result, Zahid is taking some time to be with his family so he can support Afshin and their 3 children, and that is why Zahid isn't here tonight chairing full council. But I do also want to confirm that Zahid is not standing down, as some have suggested. He's just taking a break to be a husband and a father, and he will be back with us when he is able to. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of us in this chamber when I say our thoughts and prayers are with Zahid, Afshin and their family, and thank Zahid for his commitment to public service at what is an incredibly difficult time for him and his family. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Members will also be aware of the sad news of the passing of former Mayor and Councillor Val Sedgwick. I have been notified of members who wish to speak. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr.
Val Sedge was a Lim Dem. Yeah.
Val Sedgwick was a much valued colleague and friend. She was Mrs. Lees. Val had instincts for public service which she just couldn't be taught. I was honoured and touched that she asked me to speak at her funeral service at St Edward's in Lees a fortnight ago. It was a wonderful service and very Val. First elected in 1992 for Lees Ward, she was a joy to be around and work alongside. She knew everyone and everyone knew her. When canvassing, we'd go out and start together. More than once, when we got to the bottom of the street, she would not be in sight. Guess what? She'd be just coming out of the first or the second house she called at, having been invited in for a cup of tea or even cake. She was never keen on canvassing, but you had to drag her away from chatting to people. Val was a people person first and foremost, and a politician second. Val cared about the conditions of young people. She cared about the elderly, especially those living alone, and most of all, she cared about Lees. Councillors come in different guises. Val was not a representative who sought the spotlight, but one who got satisfaction by quietly getting things done. Val never lost sight of the community she served, and she could speak up formidably when she felt she needed to make her voice heard for her constituents. Val served on so many committees that the list is exhausting. The most prominent were environmental health, social services and housing. In 2023, Val became Mayor of the Borough of Oldham. A very proud moment for her and her family. She really was a caring and devoted ambassador for the whole of our borough during this time. Val was by far one of the most popular councillors I've ever worked with. People recognised her passion and dedication for her community, which was genuinely held. She believed in standards in public life. But it wasn't all about work. Val knew how to laugh, and she laughed a lot. When you look at the photos of her, and I noticed the book of condolences outside in her mural robes, you might form one impression of her if you didn't meet her. It would be a very different impression you might have formed had you seen her turn up to a New Year's Eve fancy dress party in the guise of Walt Disney's Minnie Mouse. Every year at the Lees Remembrance Service, Val would speak to ex-service personnel and pay tribute to their service and their sacrifice. There was one phrase she always made sure to use. She would say to them, "You've done yourselves proud, you've done Lees proud." Well, Val, you've done yourself proud, you've done Lees proud, and you've done Oldham Borough proud. Rest in peace, Val.
Councillor Al-Admani.
Thank you. I was never Val's ward colleague. She stopped a year or two before I became a councillor. But from the people of Lees, you wouldn't have known that. She was the first person that they turned to, and she was the person that they always knew they'd get help from. She only lived a couple of streets away from me, and for the first couple of years that I was a councillor, she'd just catch me all the time. She'd just go, "I just need to have a word," and she'd tell me about someone who needed something, and she made sure that I did it. She loved people, and she loved the people of Lees and the village of Lees, and I've never known somebody with such dedication to a place. Even when she was struggling, she'd be out in Lee's Cemetery, she'd clean it up, she'd look after it, she'd care for it. And it behoves all of us to look after the place that we live, to care for it with, I mean, even half the dedication that she had would be a wonderful thing. Thanks, Val.
Councillor Jawar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I was fortunate to be the Deputy Mayor when Val was the Mayor in 2003-04. And I can say genuinely, I learnt a great deal from her while she was Mayor. And that helped me tremendously when I became the Mayor the following year. As the previous speaker said, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that she was genuinely a people person. Whenever she went, whether councillor or mayor, she was able to engage with people so easily. And I think that's not a quality that everybody possesses, but Val did, because she was just that kind of person. She was extremely popular, and she was very easy to engage, even as an opposition councillor, not as a deputy, but also as a councillor. I was very friendly and able to engage with her. And I think when Councillor Sykes said that she was very popular, she was popular obviously in Leeds because that's the area she represented, but I think it's right to say, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that she was a popular councillor in Oldham. You know, and that is absolutely correct. So on behalf of the Labour group here, we'd like to send our condolences to her family and friends, and also to say thank you, Val, for what you did for Oldham, especially for Leeds. May you rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Councillor Woodbine.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Val was first elected 11 years before I was born in 1992, with 1,258 votes defeating her friend Hughie MacDonald in the Lees ward. Val then served consecutively on this council for 24 years, 1 year of which she spent as the Mayor of the Metropolitan Borough. She always represented the village she loved, Lees, firstly in the ward which took its name, despite containing lots of central Oldham, and latterly Saddleworth Western Lees ward. While understated, she was a leading lady in politics in this borough, one of the first few female mayors, and definitely one of the longest serving elected members. She was a local legend in Lees, and it's easy to see why. She was a lovely lady and the most familiar face in the village. I was obviously not in politics when Val was, but I seem to have been aware of Val for a very long time because she grew up on Booth Street in Lees, around the corner from my grandfather, and most of her casework over the years, I'm sure, was not sent by post or email, but by people stopping her on the high street or in the co-op. She was universally popular, and people from across the political spectrum voted for her because she worked hard for the ward she represented, and she never overpromised. She was a selfless public servant and community councillor. For Val, people came first and politics came second, and that's the way it should be for all of us. This bit sounds awful really, but she had no airs or graces, and what I mean is that she was a very straight-talking woman. She called a spade, and she was very, very down to earth. She was not pushy or self-promoting, she just used to get on with it, and she didn't mind getting her hands dirty. I often saw her in Lees Cemetery, quietly doing some gardening or cleaning graves which had not been visited for a long time. She was also involved in organising the Whit Friday in Lees, and she was involved in the Anglican churches for a long time too. She was the church warden at St Thomas's for a long time, I don't know how many years, and she was also a school governor at Haywith Zion. She was not a Catholic, but she attended Mass with us Papists at St Edward's occasionally too, and it was a source of pride that she was that she had her funeral there a few weeks ago. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I've probably spoken for too long, but it's hard to summarise such long service in short minutes like this. But I would advise any member here today, if you want to know the full extent of Val's work, I would advise you to spend an afternoon in the local studies and archives, reading past editions of the Oldham Chronicle and vowels on almost every page. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask members to stand for a minute's silence in memory of Val? Thank you. Members will also be aware that this is the last council meeting for the Director of Finance, Anne Ryans. I call on Councillor Jabbar to speak.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd like to take up a couple of minutes of the time and pay tribute to a colleague who's leaving the Council after 17 years of sterling service. As many of you will be aware that Anne Ryans, our fantastic Director of Finance, is retiring at the end of the month. It's fair to say she'll be sorely missed by all those who have worked with her over the years. I personally will miss Anne, and really sorry to see her go. And I'm sure the sentiment is across the whole of the Council here, across all political parties. As Cabinet Member for Finance, I've worked very closely with Anne over the years, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a more dedicated officer than Anne. It's fair to describe her as a workaholic. I'm not the only one who will have received emails from her 11 o'clock on Sunday night. Anne joined the Council as an Assistant Borough Treasurer from Liverpool in 2006 and took over as Director of Finance in 2014 and held that position since then. Due to the years of austerity and latterly the cost of living crisis, Anne and the finance team she led have had their work cut out. But she faced those issues head-on, showing leadership, offering advice to me and also fellow councillors, putting solid financial practices in place. At the same time, she's not been afraid to make tough financial decisions. Under her stewardship, the Council has regularly been the first local authority in the country to close its financial books, an achievement that shows sound management and planning. Time and again, Anne delivered a balanced budget, last year being the only exception, and that was due to extra financial pressure beyond the control of the Council. Being able to work under pressure is one of Anne's assets. During COVID, her and her finance team often worked late in the night and over the weekend to ensure that the business in Oldham got their financial support and grants to continue surviving. Anne always seems to get the big decision right, like when you secured the loan for the Council at an unbelievably low interest rate. And for that, the Council and Oldhamers are grateful to you, Anne. I stand here with mixed emotion. As I said before, I'm really sorry to see her go. But I'm also happy that for one reason, being that your departing gift to us hasn't been a Section 114 notice. But joking apart, you will be truly missed. I wish you all the very best in your retirement, and I hope that now you have more time to pursue some of your interests outside work, which includes RAF and also going out to theatre. So Anne, for all that you have done for Oldham and the people of Oldham, thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Mayor, with your permission, can I ask all the leaders of the party to come at the front? And Anne, please come at the front. We've got a small presentation to make. Thank
Agreed.
You.
So this is the lady who is responsible for you having £900 million worth of net debt. Apparently she's retiring.
Thank you for that. That was thank you, Anne. Item 6, petitions. There are no petitions for the meeting of the this meeting of the council to consider. Item 7, youth council. There is no youth council business. Item 8, question time. This part of the agenda is question time, where council will consider all questions submitted in the order received, starting with public questions. There is a 30-minute time limit for public questions, and once this time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right of reply to answers given. I will be reading out the questions. If the time limit has expired and members of the public has submitted a question, the response will be published on the council website. Mr. Bates, if you do not sit down and be quiet, I will ask you to be removed.
Can I have a point of order, please, Mr. Deputy Mayor? Just on this issue, because I've just been shown what Mr. Bates has got there outside, and I think it needs clarity, because his letter says about public questions and the public being able to debate while we're in question time, and I think that's what Mr. Bates is alluding to. He's got a letter, and the wording says about the members of the public being able to debate in the time of question time, and I think it needs clarity.
So the vote can say is that in the Constitution at the moment, the particular section relating to public question time doesn't give a particular ability or power for the members of the public to debate or to question any. It's a question that is asked and answered by the relevant cabinet member.
But that's the letter. I've got the word in here, and to me it reads as though the public are allowed to contribute. So, do you want me to? I can read the line out for you. What?
Council, Mr. Bates, please sit down.
I think it just needs the members of the public to be told, Paul, because that does read a little strange. Ambiguous. That's the word.
All we've got to do is to look at what the Constitution says about public questions, and the Constitution says that the public question section relates to asking a question, which is asked by the Mayor, and responses which are given by cabinet members. There's no provision in the Constitution to allow members of the public to debate while questions are being asked.
But this letter says that we warmly invite members of the public to contribute during question time, and it says residents will be able to speak and listen to.
This will need to be discussed outside of this meeting. As we are now, there is no response or it's no debate. It's a question and an answer.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, point of order. Can the Borough Solicitor clarify which part of the Constitution he's referring to, given that if Mr. Bates has received a letter from the Council saying debate means between 1 and 2 parties, not one. So I think Mr. Bates deserves at least a clarification as to what you mean by debate.
So they've got him. He's now having to pull out the Constitution.
It's not clear what particular letter Mr. Bates is referring to. Again, just repeating that the Constitution specifies how the Council should deal with public questions at Council meetings.
So, sorry, can you refer to the section then, Paul, if you don't mind, please, as Borough Solicitor?
Of course, the letter is like 10 metres away from him, and he could easily have sight of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's in the Council Procedure Rules, Rule 10, Public Questions. It refers to notice of public questions, scope of questions, order of questions, and how they will be responded to.
Well, that is the final answer at this point. We work into the Constitution. If you want to show us that letter after the meeting, then by all means, and we perhaps have a discussion, but not here. We are moving on to the questions. Thank you. We are moving on to the questions. It is not for discussion here. Thank you. Right. The first question has been submitted by Megan Birchall. I saw the video of the old TJU's building being demolished. I can also see a visible difference in the town centre. There's still a lot of work going on and lots to do. I was wondering what the time scale is for the various projects. I call upon Cllr Shah to reply.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for reading out the question, and to Meg Birchall for asking the question. The new workspace in Spindles will be completed first, with council staff moving into the space over the winter months. This will immediately increase footfall in the Spindles and spending in our town centre businesses. It will then also free up the site where the civic centre is needed for some much needed housing. This includes moving Access Oldham and TFGM Travel Shop into the unit that used to house H&M opposite Rhode Island Coffee, to provide a new single space for residents to access help and support in the town centre. The Hive Social Enterprise Hub will also be completed later this year to support local residents with businesses, start-up support, and to provide enhanced opportunities for local businesses to network and to grow. In 2025, we'll see the new Market Hall, Archives and the Heritage Centre, and the new event space that are due for completion. And following the demolition of TJ Hughes, the steelworks for the new structure will start to go in place before Christmas this year. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is from Shadab Kumar. I saw the press release about the new partner for the town centre regeneration and development of the area, including housing. I want to know what type of housing will be built, and will there be affordable housing for those that are finding it hard to afford good housing? I call upon Councillor Taylor to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Mr Kumar for his question. I think it's fair to say that all of us in Oldham Council are really excited about the next stage in our town centre regeneration and the appointment of Muse as our private sector development partner. The exact type of housing that will make up the 2,000 town centre homes hasn't yet been fully decided and will be subject to formal planning applications, including consultation with residents in due course. There will, however, be a range of housing to be provided, both in terms of type, i.e. the number of bedrooms, and tenure, and the Council will seek to ensure that a minimum of 25% of the new homes are affordable homes, as per our stated targets. We will also look to make sure that all homes are built to zero or low carbon standards to help Oldham meet its ambitious climate emergency targets. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Adam Pate Jones. What does appointing a private sector development partner actually mean for Oldham and Oldhamers? I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Adam, for your question. I think appointing a private sector partner will allow the council to harness Muse's experience, I should say considerable experience actually, their resource capacity, their technical expertise, their financial resources and strong relationships with key stakeholders across GM, Homes England, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, which will help to accelerate progress and delivery of the much needed new homes in the town centre. The council are delighted to have selected Muse Places, who are an award-winning master developer of national acclaim and its partner, especially given the personal commitment from their managing director, Phil Mayle, who is himself an Alderman, who understands the importance of our heritage, the pride in our communities, and shares our passion to have quality, affordable, efficient and sustainable homes. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is from Shona Farnworth. In Oldham, there are many unpaid carers to friends and families, such as providing personal care, arranging medicals and social support and attending appointments. And with the Carers Leave Bill being passed recently in Parliament, does the Council believe that more action is needed, both nationally and locally, to support people in work with caring responsibilities and the borough's unpaid carers? Will the Council support this effort by launching an unpaid carers survey in Oldham so that carers can have their say on the support and services they need? And will the Council offer efficient, effective support and guidance that is always available for carers throughout the borough? I call upon Councillor Brownridge to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Shona. This is a really important question because 9.8% of our population are unpaid carers, and we know that they do a really amazing job. We do believe, however, that we can do more to support them. So this year, later on this year, we'll be launching our new carers strategy. That's been informed by a recent survey which will set out the priorities for the next few years. It will focus on early intervention and prevention for unpaid carers and ensuring that there's sufficient information, advice and support for them. We intend to have ongoing annual surveys of ward carers so that we will get thoughts and feedbacks of how the system's actually working. We're re-establishing the Carers Partnership Board and are looking for board members to represent the views of unpaid carers. So, Shona, if you'd like to participate, please email me and we'll take you up on it. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is from Connor Green. What conversations has the Council had with CFGM and TransPennine Express about the potential closure of the ticketing office at Greenfield train station? I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Connor for his question. I have to start by saying, Mr Mayor, I think it's a disgrace that last week the rail operators themselves admitted that they knew that this will make it harder for older and disabled residents to travel by train, and yet they've put these proposals forward anyway with apparently no shame. Railways are a vital connection for many of our residents, especially in Saddleworth, and preventing vulnerable residents from being able to access the city region and beyond is absolutely unforgivable. Both the Council and TFGM have massive concerns about this proposal and have expressed strong objections back to TransPennine through consultation responses. I've written a joint response with Oldham MPs Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrahams. We are currently waiting for feedback on this matter. As I said, we've objected to this as a Council and we hope that the plans do not go ahead. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is from Latif Chowdhury. How will the Council and TFGM measure success when it comes to the school street scheme across Oldham? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Latif, for your question. And I'd like to say I'm really positive about the school street scheme. This will improve the safety of our children and their parents or guardians, and also reduce the amount of pollutants in the air around our schools, the air that our children breathe. The Council measures the success of the school street schemes via the school's travel plan and a hands-up survey conducted twice a school year. This shows changes over time and before and after results for the school street schemes based on how children travel to the school, ideally moving from car trips to active travel choices, which includes walking, cycling and scootering. From the outset, all schools are made aware of the Mode Shift Stars accreditation scheme and that every scheme needs to achieve a minimum of a bronze award. However, in Oldham, schools aim for silver accreditation, which means the children from the school are achieving at least a 10% shift from cars to active travel choices. The Council also does multiple informal consultations with residents and parents to understand their experiences before and after a school street scheme. To measure the success, this includes views on driver behaviours, safety, congestion and impact on local community.
Thank you. The next question is from Stephanie Shuttleworth. I know Broadway is managed by National Highways, but is there anything the Council can do to work with National Highways and Costco to try and mitigate against the queues of traffic caused by people wanting to fuel up at Costco? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Stephanie, for your question. The Council is aware of these concerns and is working with National Highways on this matter. National Highways are looking at ways in which they can increase the number of traffic lanes along Broadway, especially on the approach to the motorway junction, to increase capacity and reducing congestion. The approach to Costco Long Lane Junction is also included in the investigation. The Council has been informed that proposals are being developed and new road layout designs are being finalised with the intention of consultation early next year. Depending on feedback from local communities and understanding the complexities for the construction programme, this could be underway next year. The Council has been liaising with National Highways, and together we have also been working with Costco on their internal operations for accessing and egressing their car park. I'll take this opportunity to assure residents that despite statements by individuals on social media, there has not been any planning application from Costco to provide an alternative exit since the erection of the petrol station. Transport for Greater Manchester, their urban traffic control team, have also been involved with regards to reviewing the signal timings where appropriate to ease congestion in the meantime.
Thank you. The next question is from Anita Lowe. On the 14th of July 2023, the Manchester Evening News and in a report in the Oldham Times produced results of the 12 worst rated GP surgeries according to a patient survey in Greater Manchester. Out of those 12 listed, 5 were rated poor in Oldham. They were listed as follows. Worth Medical Centre was first. Oldham Medical Centre 4. Royton Medical Centre 6. 8 Medical Vale Centre and 8 Caport Medical Worth. I would like to question Cabinet Members for Health and Social Care, Barbara Brownbridge, or her Deputy Councillor Marie Bashworth. Since this was published, what contact have you made, if any, with these practices in Oldham to support and offer guidance in bringing patient satisfaction up to an acceptable standard? I call upon Councillor Brownbridge to
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The survey is just one way to understand GP performance, but all practices have been contacted by the Greater Manchester Integrated Care Board, of which I'm a member, and asked to submit plans to address these concerns. All of the practices were obviously disappointed with the results of the survey and accepted that further action is required to address these issues. All 5 practices highlighted in the Oldham Times piece are amongst 26 Oldham practices that have submitted an expression of interest for modern general practice access funding because they recognise residents' frustrations. Clearly there is work to be done about access to appointments and understanding how the GP system works. So I want to reassure residents and councillors that access to GP appointments is an issue that's constantly raised with the new integrated care system, both locally and at a GM level, and it's one of a number of complaints that residents have made when we're out on the doorsteps. So we're aware of it and we are investigating to see what can be done to improve the situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me. It's not. Excuse me. Can you please cease? Will you be silent, please? Could you be silent, please, so we can continue the meeting? No, you are not. Can you? If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will need to ask you to leave. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will need to ask you to leave. Can you leave the meeting, please? Can you leave the meeting, please? It is not for the gallery to be asking questions at this point. Could you please stop or leave? Right, I'm asking you now formally to leave the meeting. Could we please remove that gentleman from the meeting? Could you please refrain from saying anything further, else we will need to adjourn the meeting. Could you please stop speaking then, please, so we can continue with the questions? No, it's not for you to ask a question, right? We're just going to adjourn the meeting for a minute and ask him to... Could you remove the gentleman?
So they want Peter removing. They want Peter removing from that meeting. It sounded like Peter Brown to me anyway. And before that, I think there were 7 or 8 public questions, of which the vast majority, apart from Anita Lowe's at the end, were Labour Party candidates, including parish councillors. That is meant to be public questions. Clearly, it was not public questions. This was set up by AROOJ SHAH. You will see that the Director of Constitutional Services is not sat on the front table. No doubt she'll be whinging or complaining about harassment or some sort, but these questions have got to be asked of these policy holders, these position holders. They are complicit in this. They are not publishing what time public questions are allowed to be submitted, and they're loading up these public questions by their own stooges. Elizabeth Drogan is the Director of Constitutional Services. She's on the best part of £100,000 a year, and you have every right to hold her to account. This is not harassment of any form whatsoever. It's asking, well, it's pointing out the obvious, isn't it? It's pointing out the obvious. This council is... But it's corrupt. It's run like a banana republic. It's about as democratic as North Korea. I'd wager the public in Pakistan have more of a say of holding their democratic representatives to account than the public in Oldham. And I'd wager that. So that's what's gone on. I did speak to Peter last week before, 2 weeks ago, I think. In Rochdale, I saw him. He turned up in Rochdale when I was speaking for Billy and the Page UK guys. And he did say he'd got a letter that says he was allowed back in the council meetings. And I urged him, I'll be honest with you, I urged him not to say anything, not to disrupt the meeting if he was going to go. Because all they'll do is not just ban him, but then demonise everyone else through his actions. Not that I'm in any way disagreeing with his frustrations. I completely agree with his frustrations. I completely agree with his frustrations. Here's Ibi. I think this is the young man who does a lot of charity work. Salams, Ibi. And well, thank you very, very much. Nothing much new. I'm still here, still in one piece. Still campaigning to clean up our town, Ibi, from the cartels. Ibi, why don't you just share, if you are able to do so? Am I making it up about the cartels? Are the cartels real, Ibi? As one of the few rare, brave Asian posters on here, am I making it up about the cartels? The block voting, the postal vote fraud, the dodgy deals to get houses. Is any of that made up? I agree with you, Susan. There is no democracy in this town. There is no democracy in this town. Wow. Thank you, Ibi. And there you go. A young man who does a lot of charity work, well respected in this town. They're all in for themselves, Raja. You've been on the ball. There you go. If any of you doubt what I say, go and ask your friends or associates in the Pakistani or Bangladeshi communities directly about the very, very specific concerns I have of how this town is run and who really runs it. Yeah, I think I can't disagree with you, Julie. I can't disagree with you. And yes, Denise, welcome to him. He's been on before, and to thank him. He does a lot of charity work. You'll see him in the local newspapers and stuff. He didn't turn up last year. Remember when they did those awards last year? Ibi was actually the one who was meant to get the award, and clearly they diluted it by adding their children's nephews, cousins onto the list of accolades. It's I don't even know where to start in this town sometimes. I think the public questions just demonstrated it, didn't it? The public questions just demonstrated it. No shame. Question after question by Labour Party operative masquerading as members of the public. Well, they are members of the public, but you know what I mean. It was done, coordinated to prevent genuine questions from being asked. I think there will be, don't you? Is it Capricorn Security who are under? This is the Capricorn Security that closed down under some dubious circumstances without paying HMRC. What, hundreds of thousands of pounds? And once we exposed it, the council hid it. How can you award a contract to a company that's not paid its tax bill? Or to people involved in the company, the previous company hadn't paid its tax bill? Surely there's some due diligence involved. Surely there's some, there's some standards. It's not just the councillors that are the bullies. You can see it's the council officers. You saw the deputy leader, Saeed Osman, whispering into the ear. You saw the borough solicitor repeatedly making, I think Lewis did well. I'm not going to criticise him. He asked for the specific section in the Constitution and for that line to be read out, but he didn't read it out, did he? He just gave the headings It just gave the headings in the Constitution. But Warren Bates has a letter. And actually, you know, Brian Hoban did his fair bit there as well, because he stood up there. He stood up there and defended Warren Bates. He stood up and defended Warren Bates. I'm not Brian Hoban's fan, but he stood up and defended Warren Bates. That's exactly what it is. Institutional bullying. Institutional bullying. Now, what I will do to the Labour Party stooges who watch this or follow this is every name on the public questions, I will go and research them and produce a document as to who they are, where they stood previously, and we'll see how many of them are connected to the Labour Party, and I will publish that. I stay so calm, maybe, because I spent part of my life working in a world I would not wish on anyone. And I stay so calm because I know if we fail here with what we must do, which is fight these people at the ballot box and take back our town, then what will come? What will come? Maybe not in my generation, but my daughter's or her granddaughter's generation, without a shadow of a doubt, is a town and a place and possibly a country that is no different than the failed states of Libya, Somalia. Yeah, AROOJ, this is all orchestrated. This is all orchestrated. And remember, at some point today, they've also got an agenda item where they want to reduce public questions to 15 minutes, hidden in the constitutional changes. Hidden in the constitutional changes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If I was in charge of this council, if I had any influence over this council, I would be calling in the government to take over the running of this town, and I would be sacking for gross misconduct the Director of Constitutional Services, Elizabeth Drogan, for a failure to protect. You know, this is a democracy. And we have a right to hold our politicians to account. No one's swearing at them. No one's threatening them. You've seen this. They want to take it to an extreme. And Julie's right. They drive us to shout and scream in frustration. Because if they did their jobs properly, Peter Brown would not be heckling from the side, from the public gallery. They've just gone through a facade of a public question time where name after name, question after question was submitted by members of the Labour Party, even a parish councillor. Latif Chaudhry. Shadab actor. Shadab's a bloody, not actor. Shadab, whatever it is, sorry. Shadab's a Kumar. Shadab's a former mayor. Remember when people asked questions last time and AROOJ SHAH got up and said, former Conservative candidate, former this, former that. Well, why is she not standing up and saying former Labour Party mayor? It's because she wanted to harass and intimidate the members of the public who asked questions beforehand. Oldham is not a democracy, it is a tyranny. It is run by despots, and the only way you'll get your town back is by growing a set and voting them out. I think Lewis spoke out, and Brian Hoban spoke out so far. More will speak up by the end of the meeting, I think, Denise, you'll see. It must be really kicking off. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I agree, Denise. I mean, what do you want me to say? I saw John Hughes sat in the public gallery, you know, with Maggie Hurley sat there. Maggie Hurley will never say anything. I think it's very clear she's not going to do what we had hoped she would do. There's been no motion submitted, Julie, you've seen. There's been no motion from the independents submitted yesterday. Now, Mark Hince has every reason not to have submitted a motion, and he still tried, and Elizabeth Drogan blocked it, remember? His mother died. But Maggie has no excuse. This is the third, is it the third council meeting? There's only 6 council meetings a year. This is the third, yeah? There's an adjournment, Lynn, because Peter Brown, it sounded like Peter Brown was speaking out from the public gallery. I couldn't really hear enough about what he was saying. I heard the word cemetery in there, so I'm presuming the council have still not... and it's important to him. It's important to everyone with loved ones buried in this town, that our cemeteries are looked after. I don't know what to say, Denise. I really don't know what to say. We've been trying for 5 years. You've been with me for a long part of that journey. Yeah? I don't know what to say. There's 148 people watching this. 149 people watching this. Who have joined us during the evening. They don't want to be held accountable. And those of us who do speak out, well, you've seen what they've done to me. You've seen what they've done to me and are continuing to try to do to me. What for? Teaching you how to ask questions, educating you on how to interpret council documents, mentoring you so that you can navigate the traps and avoid being called racist and far right and whatnot. I mean, I deleted, I thought I'd blocked her, but I hadn't. But I tried blocking her again or banning her. What's she called? Sally Hyman. She posted yesterday on one of my things. She's not even in my constituency, which is what I said to her. She lives up in Saddleworth somewhere. I'm standing in Oldham West, Chadderton and Royton. But she's fixated, like so many of them, fixated on attacking me. Because I ruin, or I will destroy the reality of and the comfortable arrangements in this town. She claimed I was being transphobic. Well, I'm sorry. But I want male toilets and female toilets, and I want my daughter to go into toilets where the only other people in those toilets are biologically female, not self-identifying themselves as women whilst they've got body parts that I've got. I don't think I'm alone in that viewpoint, and I don't think that makes me transphobic. I'm a parent. I want to protect my child. How does that make me a transphobe? If you got a penis and you want to self-identify as a woman, then go right ahead if you're an adult. If you want to have surgery to do whatever that needs to be done, go right ahead. It's got nothing to do with me. Let live and let live. I don't believe biological male should be accessing the same toilets that my 8-year-old daughter accesses. That doesn't make me a transphobe. And of course, the contradiction, the irony is, why is she picking on me? You also, what happened at the last council meeting when Councillor Mushtaq, the deputy leader of Oldham Council, got up and instead of just saying we will be supporting Oldham Pride, he claimed the question was Islamophobic and AROOJ SHAH refused to answer it. And we now know AROOJ SHAH, who's Andy Burnham's equality lead, has not attended any of the Pride events in any of the Greater Manchester areas. I think if there's a phobia there, I think Sally Hyman and her associates need to look somewhere else. I'm completely fine with gay people. In fact, I've been attacked because I refuse to condemn gay people. And it is wrong. It is wrong. No, Ian, my friend, we are their biggest threats. It's a collective. We are their biggest threats. Wilby did indeed say I was gay, but Wilby said I was gay in the context of trying to attract violence towards me, Jack. Is what Wilby did. Remember, this is a close associate of... he used it as a slur. I have no issue. If I was gay, that's my business. If I'm straight, that's my business. Live and let live, like I said. I have a penis. And when I go to use the toilets, I go into the men's. I'd not dare going into the women's. I don't think I should. However I identify myself. It's all connected, isn't it, Nick? I mean, the MP for Rochdale is the former police and crime commissioner who was involved in the sacking or the suspension of Hughie MacDonald when he first leaked that email. They're all connected. It's a network. It's an old boys club. It's an old boys club. Well, the meeting is still adjourned. Let me text message a councillor or two and ask them what's going on and see if we get a response. I hope Peter's okay. They've lost this, aren't they? As soon as they start doing this, time after time, repeatedly, and rigging is the right word, rigging public questions. I saw the Financial Times last week. Jennifer Williams put this article out, front page of the supplement in the Financial Times. He had Glyn Potts on the front, who is the head teacher of Blessed Henry Newman. And Blessed Henry Newman is Of course, a school that's in requires improvement would have been special measures. I think they argued to lift it to requires improvement. But Glyn Potts, the head teacher, encouraged people, tweeted in his capacity as the head teacher during work hours even, encouraging people to follow Neil Wilby. And Neil Wilby had not long ago posted photographs of young women's breasts. If I had the time and the inclination, I would be handing out flyers outside Newman School to the female students and their parents, making them aware of the actions of Mr. Potts. And you know this by now. They've gone through all of my social media accounts for the last 10 years, 12 years, however long I've used social media. And they will have found nothing I've said or done that has me looking anything like them. Because if I had said or done anything like they do, you would all know about it, and it would have made the front page of the Oldham Times. Dr. Chauhan is not at the meeting. There was a statement by AROOJ SHAH at the beginning, and she made reference to his wife's illness, and it's what I've said to all of you. I think when I first found out before the news was announced, we're human beings, and we're not like them. From what I can gather, his wife's very ill. They've got 3 children and his wife's very ill. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I think they need the time and space to find whatever solace they can in the time they have. I think the top table was very bare because the chief executive isn't there. But I think, what's she called? Elizabeth Drogan is playing tricks. She'll be playing tricks. Yesterday I commented that I would, if I was in charge, I'd sack her and I'd video stream it while she was marched out. Now, clearly having such an opinion of being, if I was in charge, I would sack her, does not in any way constitute anything, but I would imagine she's gone running to the police. I would imagine she's gone running to the police. Now, those of you who joined me yesterday, I'll call you all as witnesses if this ends up in court. What am I trying to articulate? They are trying to portray themselves as victims when they're not the victims, are they? We know who the victims are in all of this, and it's not the council officers, nor is it the councillors. They're not the victims in all of this. The children of this town are the victims. The parents of this town are the victims. Those of you who pay council tax are the victims. I'm sending another message. I'm just trying to find out if what's going on. Let's go on Twitter, see if there's anything there. I didn't recognise the press person on the end. It's normally Charlotte Green, isn't it? No, I'm not seeing a live feed. I'll debate with any of them. You know I'll debate with any of them. But they won't debate with me in public at all. And the reason they won't debate in public with me at all is because I am on the side of right. Maybe, is it Florida chicken, Evan? I'm sure one of the shops is Florida chicken. Maybe they've, you know, maybe they've put an order out to Florida chicken. Sorry, I've been messaging some of you around public questions and to submit some questions immediately at the end of tonight's council meeting. And I think we've got 4 or 5 sent. So let's see what comes of it. So let's see. So maybe we're waiting. I used to love it. It's Florida, isn't it, on the left? Is that where Bergman's used to be? Or somewhere near there, is what I remember from my days of being younger and going out in Oldham. And Julie's optimistic it's coming back on in a sec. She must have been speaking to someone. Oh, Mo Ali's doing a live on Facebook. Yeah, near the Coliseum at the bottom, isn't it? There was a vodka bar up the side of that strip towards the Coliseum, wasn't there? On the right. I used to, my friends and I used to go to the various clubs across the country. We're into the old sort of the dance scene. I think you can imagine what the 90s were like, and up to the 2000s. But we'd always try and spend a Sunday catching up with friends in Oldham. So we'd come on a Sunday evening and go out in Oldham. Now, of course, my Sunday evenings are sat in front of a screen, sharing my time with all of you. Equally pleasurable, very equally pleasurable. If you take value in these transmissions, and this is the 172 of you who are with me, not a single person has bought me a coffee this evening. I've put this transmission out free to air, a place where we can all, you know, well,
I'm about to restart the meeting. At this point, I will hand it over to the Deputy Chief Executive to make a statement. Our CEO to make a statement. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. We've looked at the issue, and again, first and foremost, it's important to recognise that a number of people attending tonight were sent letters. I'm going to investigate and look at those letters and to ensure that each and every single one of them gets a response directly from the local authority on behalf of the Chief Executive. There does appear to be some element of discrepancy between a covering letter and a general attachment that has been put into the pack itself. And it can be read, well, it does say very clearly that where public meetings do take place, there is an encouragement for active participation, and therefore I have apologised personally to Mr. Brown. I've agreed to meet with him to discuss with him his specific issues, and I would say that we would, as a council, meet with anybody and work with them to resolve any concerns or issues that they have personally. We do recognise people have different vulnerabilities, different challenges, and we're here to serve the public. So effectively, with that in mind, I'm going to hand back over to the Mayor, and we will contact those individuals individually who've received this letter, and we'll ensure that that's put right, and where appropriate, we will ensure that an apology is offered. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor.
Thank you, Saeed. And it's Deputy Mayor, by the way. We're going to continue with 10 minutes of public questions now. So I'll move on to the next question, which has come from Imran Chowdhury. Councillor Abdul Jabbar, Nazrul Islam and Mo Anahali all continue to openly fraternise with the former chairman of Oldham Central Mosque. This man is a convicted sex offender. How can Oldham Council promote... How can Oldham Council promote a victim survivor charter for victims of CSE whilst its councillors take part in this behaviour? Does the council feel it's appropriate for any of its councillors to attend community events and sit alongside convicted sex offenders? I call on Councillor Jabbar to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. A key part of a local councillor role is to attend local events and to engage with the local community. Now, when you end up in a public meeting, it's very, very difficult to actually sit next to somebody without actually knowing their private life. And also, it's very difficult, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to actually carry out any DBS checks for anyone attending public meetings. But what's absolutely clear is this, that sexual abuse, exploitation, violence of any form is abhorrent. We stand firmly with the survivors and the victims of CSE. We support the police and the criminal justice system in wanting to ensure anyone found guilty of these offences is brought to justice. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been received from Kyle Vivian. How can regular Oldhamers help those who are struggling with the cost of living crisis and skyrocketing demand at community hubs like Oldham Food Bank? I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
Thanks, Kyle. So many of our residents already support the food bank, but I think we all know that as the cost of living crisis rages on, that more that can be done for residents, the more we should be able to do. Oldhamers who wish to help their fellow residents are able to volunteer their time to help others in need. There are a number of opportunities available for residents who are wanting to get involved, and you can find out more information on either the Council's website or on Action Together's website. Can I just take this opportunity to thank Action Together for everything they do for the people of Oldham? Laura and her team are really good assets for the borough, and I can say this as the GM lead for communities. Our voluntary and community sector is miles ahead of others in GM, and we should cherish it. Back to the question at hand, over 90% of the food distributed by food banks is donated by the public. The food bank relies on the goodwill and support of the people of Oldham, helping their other fellow Oldhamers. If you want to help, there's a page on the food bank's website all about donating food, money or time to them. I know there's plenty of councillors across the chamber tonight, including you, Deputy Mayor, who have given up your time to deliver food parcels on behalf of the food bank. I also want to give a shout out to the Saddleworth Labour Party's second annual Tea for Trussell event held in July this year, where they raised £450 and hundreds of items of food was donated to that community. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is from Sharon Jones. Was the council aware that Chief Superintendent Chris Bowen had fled the town? Can the council reassure the public that we are safe and that nothing untoward has taken place with the sudden departure of Oldham's most senior police officer? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Sharon for a question. I'm grateful for the opportunity to clear this up and prevent the spread of further conspiracy theories. Obviously, personnel decisions taken by GMP are up to them, but I can say that Greater Manchester Police frequently reviews the portfolios for which its senior employees are responsible for, moving senior officers into different roles to provide specialist skills where they are needed and to maintain professional development. Chief Superintendent Goodman Bowen had been in post as District Commander for Oldham for nearly 2 years, and rather than fled Oldham, has now been reassigned by GMP in a role appropriate for his skills and experience. Temporary Chief and Superintendent Phil Hutchinson, who has been the Operations Superintendent for the Oldham District since early 2022, is currently providing leadership to the District pending their routine scheduled promotion process. And I'd like to reassure the public that nothing untoward has taken place and police operations are continuing as normal.
Mr Bates, would you stop interrupting the meeting? Thank you. The next question is from Sheila Brophy. Knife crime destroys lives and blights communities. Will the relevant Cabinet member of Oldham Council therefore please detail what the Council is currently doing to raise awareness of the dangers of knife crime, and do they agree that anyone found to be guilty of wielding a machete should be nowhere near a councillor or the Council chamber? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Sheila, for your question. Oldham Council recognises the significant impact and harm that knife and weapon crime has on communities and has implemented a number of measures to attempt to reduce such types of behaviour, using research from the Greater Manchester Violence Reduction Unit, adapting recognised good practices from other areas, and listening to residents to establish why they feel the need to carry a knife or a weapon. The responses have been included in inputs into schools using presentations and the commissioning of a play regarding knife crime. And we've commissioned targeted works with individuals at risk of engaging in knife crime and focusing on messaging on how we keep residents safe so they do not feel the need to carry a knife or weapon. We are also working greatly with Greater Manchester Police to identify individuals involved in knife crime, supporting their criminal prosecutions where appropriate through civil remedies such as criminal behaviour orders. We've also funded knife archers in the past at the request of GMP, which were deployed in hotspot locations. And in reference to the Council chamber, I can confirm we have robust security and screening operations in place to ensure that no member of the public is able to access the chamber with a knife or a weapon, to protect both elected members and the general public during public meetings. Members across the chamber will be grateful for your concerns for their safety.
Thank you. The time limit has expired. Members of the public have submitted questions that have not been answered at this moment in time, but the responses will be published on the Council website. Apologies. The next part of this section is question and leader Cabinet time with a time limit of 30 minutes. The leader of the Conservative group, Councillor Sheldon, will ask his questions. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The Oldham Coliseum was a local and indeed a national landmark that was immensely popular with the residents of Oldham until it was forced to close at the end of March, with the council leader at the time claiming that the building was at the end of its life. A new independent report, however, highlights that the building is not beyond repair and that a cost of around £137,000 in repairs would be enough to have kept the theatre open, at least until the new building on Union Street is built and opened, which would have allowed the team at the Coliseum to continue to deliver their craft in the borough. At the moment, that work is not due to start until 2026 at the earliest, or possibly not at all, given this council's track record of failed projects. Given that, around the same time, £1 million was given to Boundary Park, it is disappointing to see that the same regard was not given to the future of the much beloved Coliseum. Whilst there are plans for a new theatre, which is arguably better than no theatre at all, this mini-theatre is not what the residents want. It is smaller and will not have the atmosphere that the whole building had. Will the leader give her support to make this quick fix in order to ensure that the Coliseum continue to run at the Fairbottom Street site, at least until the new theatre is built? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Sheldon, for your question. And I'll also the opportunity to do some myth busting as well, actually. So firstly, I'd like to start from the fact that the council never, ever closed the Coliseum. In actual fact, it was long before any conversation that they'd ever had with the council that they'd already decided that they were going to close the Coliseum. And they did that without the input from the council. What I do need to clarify is that for 10 years, both the Coliseum and the council have known and have agreed that the Fairbottom Street site is not fit for the future and not the theatre that we need. The Coliseum have not informed us they have changed their mind on the need for that, and I'm in regular contact with the new chair. In fact, they remain heavily involved in the plans we're putting in place, which are due to go to planning committee soon. Whilst the Fairbottom Street building was and remains much loved, and I share that love for it, it had significant issues requiring a huge amount of investment for it to have a long-term future. So the report that we've seen and the report that the council did doesn't deal with the long-term fixes that are needed to have that building remain open. It would have needed major redevelopment works and the addition of new facilities to bring it up to modern-day standards for access and the widest range of audiences of all ages, including people with disabilities. The constraints of the site and the age of the building were also further difficulties in addressing these crucial improvements. The building condition survey carried out in February this year by the council had some concerns, and the subsequent independent report carried out by the planning team also shared them same concerns, which the report that the new board has commissioned alludes to as well, but they do not address again the major underlying issues. Instead, both reports relate only to urgent health and safety works, which would have needed to be immediately addressed if the Fairbottom Street building was to be continued to be used. The cost of these repair works cannot therefore be interpreted as a cost of bringing that theatre back into use in the long term. Now, the new theatre, when it does happen and does come into fruition, and I do believe in our Creating a Better Place programme, and I do think that, and it started delivering already, we've seen like diggers in the ground and things happening. I do believe that that is going to be the theatre that everybody is going to learn to love. And the Coliseum, we're in regular contact with them, Councillor Sheldon. We wouldn't do anything that they wouldn't agree with, but we have to be really, really sensible in our approach. It would be really reckless for me, as much as I'd love to share that emotion, because I do, it'd be really reckless for me as a leader to say that we would put that money in now for a short-time fix. We're just not in that financial situation to do that at all. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, may I make a point of personal explanation?
To. Points of personal explanation.
Just with reference to the initial point made by Councillor Shah, and I realise that she wasn't present at the time, saying that there weren't discussions with the council before the decision was taken to close the Coliseum. There were discussions with the council, which I was present at.
Councillor Samuel Hamdani is right. He was a member of the board. I know the discussions weren't in the spirit that he's just said. Everything that I read, the discussions that I've had, even with the new board, the discussions I've had while I was leader last time and deputy leader, are not what Councillor Samuel Hamdani is alluding to. They have long known that that building is not fit for purpose. They have long known that it's not going to last for as long as they want it to. But they've also been in continuous conversations with Councillor Samuel Hamdani on the board in terms of the viability of that building. And once again, it's not the council that closed it. It's their own choice.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Mr Deputy Mayor, if I could just add a little thought of my own, would that be all right to the last question? All I'm asking for is that it is peanuts to keep this theatre open, which we could do until the new theatre is built, and we don't want to lose talent to... Fair enough. Next question.
Mr Mayor, I will come back to Councillor Sheldon. I will happily have another discussion with the Coliseum if that's what you're asking for. I don't see an issue in that.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Mr Deputy Mayor, my second question. In recent weeks, we have seen the announcement of significant new funding for projects in Oldham from the government. Notably, nearly £6 million from the Department of Education to improve the SEND, and AP provision for our young people with special educational needs or disabilities, and over £1.5 million from the Department of Transport for transport networks in the Beale Valley, Broadbent Moss, upgrading the Big Lamp Junction, a segregated cycle lane on Crompton Way, and to develop a business case for improved transport in the Oldham Mumps corridor. Will the Leader of the Council join me in welcoming this much needed funding and acknowledge the benefits that the borough and our residents will gain from this significant investment in our people and transport infrastructure from the Conservative government? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
I call on Councillor Shah to reply.
If I thought my response would be a sincere one, I'd be happy. There's nothing more I'd love to stand here and acknowledge government funding for Oldham if I thought they did that in a sincere way. One-off funding I'm deeply grateful for, but we can't hide away from the absolutely unfair cuts that we've had to make for the last 13 years because they've pulled funding from everywhere else. What I would like, and I would gladly acknowledge the government of today, if they would reinstate public funding for services that we have to take away from our residents that need it the most. So the one-off funding is great, but actually what we do have to acknowledge is that they have chronically underfunded local government for many years now, and we're going to see that we've seen the impact already, and we're going to continue to see it.
Councillor Sykes, Leader of the Liberal Democrat Group, to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I want to start my question by paying tribute to all the pupils across Oldham Borough who recently received their A-levels, T-levels, BTECs, GCSEs and other qualifications recently. But Mr Deputy Mayor, as a council, we have much work to do when it comes to education in our borough. The latest Ofsted inspections across some of our secondary schools paint, if I'm being generous, a very mixed picture. For far too long in Oldham, for far too many people in Oldham, there isn't the option of sending your children to a high-performing school. Too many secondary schools are rated as inadequate or in need of improvement. The impact of the pandemic years is still keenly felt across the schooling system, and too little is understood about the impact of what these years of disruption have on pupil attainment. School absences are spiralling out of control. Persistent absences have risen by more than 80% in the last 4 years. The damage that this missed classroom time is going to do to the future life chances of our next generation cannot be overstated. This is unacceptable, and it should be a top priority for this council to help put it right. Last month I wrote to the Director of Children's Services following the mixed Ofsted findings, asking him to outline the council's strategic response. Since then we've had results day and another set of Ofsted findings, and this time dealing with SEND provision in the borough. The outcome, widespread systematic failings which must be urgently addressed. So will the Leader outline her administration's plans to tackle these important issues and play a leading role in delivering the first-rate education offer that Oldham deserves, or is the strategy to wait for handouts from the great and good at Eton College?
I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
So thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question. And I have to say, I agree with most of what he says, but the reality is that we don't control most of these schools, but that doesn't mean to say that we haven't got a plan and that it's not our problem. So I do share the frustration that he has because it affects our residents. I've had lots of chats with the Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor Mohan Ali, about ways we can improve this, but the difficulty is a fragmented education sector, which is an issue that is beyond Oldham, unfortunately, but we do continue to lobby as much as we can and do what we can. It's an absolute absolute top priority for us, and it is a major, major priority for our new Director of Education. Our primary schools are performing well, but we know some of our secondary schools are underperforming and we need to do more. The simple answer to Councillor Sykes' question is yes, of course I will.
Thank you. Cllr Hince, leader of the independent group, to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I, along with many others within the borough, were horrified to read the Ofsted report on the recent SEND inspection, which has identified that this council has yet again failed vulnerable children. Prior to the inspection, it was communicated by both the Managing Director of Children and Young People and the Director of Education, Skills and Early Years that, and I quote, "We are confident we have a lot of excellent practice to showcase." Unfortunately, Ofsted's conclusion was there are widespread and/or systematic failings leading to significant concerns about the experiences and outcomes of children and young people with special educational needs and/or disabilities, which the local area partnership, i.e. this council, must address urgently. Yet again, this highlights the gap between the delusional mindset of the council's senior officers and leadership against the painful reality of those parents and carers effectively at their mercy when seeking services and safeguarding for their children, whether it be from grooming gangs or, as it is now, by inept delivery of services to those who need it most. So my question is simple. Who in the leadership of this council is willing to take responsibility and apologise for this latest monstrous failure? Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Shah to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Hince for his question. But before I respond, I will say, make a request to members across the chamber. I think it's legitimate to attack political opponents on areas of policy. I think that's fine. I think it's legitimate for members to raise their concerns about services that they are disappointed with. But I think it's illegitimate and unfair and not nice and unkind and goes against every and all the values that we believe in when we criticise officers in the way that we do. This is a political forum, full council is. You know, officers aren't here, they don't have the right of reply, and it's massively unfair. I don't believe anybody, and I've said this, I can't remember how many times, comes to work to do a bad job. Elected members across this chamber, regardless of what colour rosette they wear, we might have different ideologies, but we don't come here to do a disservice to our residents. And I just think a little bit of respect for councillor officers will go a long way, especially when most of our officers are our residents too. But I can't pretend that I wasn't disappointed in the outcome of the recent SEND inspection by Ofsted. So I do understand why Councillor Hince would raise this today, and he's right to do so. Not for us as a council, and not for officers, and not for anybody else, but for all those families and young people who we support through those services. The safety and care of all Oldham's residents is a top priority for us. So we've taken the feedback from that report extremely, extremely seriously. The report did highlight what is working well and what more needs to be done to protect this vulnerable group, children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. We're glad inspectors recognise the progress that has been made since the last inspection in 2019, but the report did clearly indicate and identify some significant areas that we must address with the NHS as soon as possible. This is a partnership agreement between SEND and us. It's the council and the health service, and we will be holding people to account and putting in governance structures that means that we do the best for our residents. These improvements include urgently identifying and addressing delays and gaps in access to health services. It is unacceptable that children are waiting too long for speech and language therapy. It is unacceptable that they wait too long for mental health support. And this council has to lead the improvements that are needed. And in that regard, I have no issue, Councillor Hince, in standing up and apologising for them failings, because I do see it my responsibility to hold us to account and our health partners in this. We're working alongside the NHS to deliver and oversee an improvement plan and address all the feedback we've been given. We're also working with Point and Oldham Parent Carer Forum to ensure the views of parents, carers, children and young people influence that improvement to ensure that they get the services that they deserve. In terms of the...
Move extension. Move extension. Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the last part of Councillor Hince's question, I have said that when he asked who will apologise, the answer is I will, on behalf of the partnership, and I'll also say that I will ensure that the improvement plan is delivered and that progress is reported to all councillors as it should be done, and all residents, and particularly those who need and use the services. Thank you.
Councillor Holbin, Leader of the Failsworth Independent Party, to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. On Councillor Shah's first journey into that seat as the Leader of the Council, she introduced Don't Trash Oldham. People have mixed views of how it went, but we're all aware of the litter and the fly tipping. The problem that I think we've got, and I think needs addressing, is recently the people that run our tips now have put another thing out stopping people from taking certain vehicles in, along with the amount of times that we're now limited to, are these things that need addressing by the council, because otherwise Don't Trash Oldham is not going to work if all these restrictions are put on people who are using the public tip. They're now talking about vehicle size as well as the amount of trips you can make. So if we can't do anything with the people that run these tips, there is no point in doing Don't Trash Oldham, because we're just asking people to fly tip if they can't take their stuff to the tip. Can that be addressed, please?
Thank you, Councillor Holbein, for your question. I think there is an issue around van sizes because some people have started using it to dump trade waste, but I do think you make a good point, and I think we do need to have them conversations, because we can't have one part of a service that contradicts another. So thank you for your question, and I'll happily have those conversations with officers too. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Councillor Davis to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I've been thinking to get that right all night. Could the member responsible for the war memorial in the town centre please look into the situation where motor vehicles are parking on the cobbled area? It appears to be from the property which used to be the former Greaves Arms. They are taking the bollards down on the road and leaning them on the war memorial. This is a total lack of respect to the people who paid the ultimate price.
I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your question. The area where vehicles are parked is an unadopted highway. However, the vehicles do cross and remove bollards from a part of the highway that is adopted. We've recently been made aware of the bollards being removed and placed against the memorial so vehicles can access the parking area. Officers from the corporate landlord team will be working with local businesses and users of the area to ensure that when the bollards are removed, they're placed in a safe area away from the memorial.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Harrison to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Coercive control is on the rise. In fact, according to the ONS of the 25th of November 2022, significantly so. There were 41,626 recorded offences of coercive control in England and Wales in the year ending March 2022. This is up from 33,954 the year before and 24,856 the year before that. In September 2022, Refuge launched their campaign, Make It Mandatory, a campaign to ensure that 16 to 19-year-olds receive education on domestic abuse and controlling or coercive behaviour. It is my personal belief that this is not early enough, but in any event, they found that less than half of 16 to 19-year-olds are receiving this education. Please can the Cabinet Member for Education provide the statistics on the number of 16 to 19-year-olds who are receiving this education in Oldham? A breakdown of each educational facility will be appreciated too. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Ali to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for your question. So our local colleges, namely Oldham College and Oldham Sixth Form College, deliver this education as part of their contextualised safeguarding curriculum or tutorial curriculum, which is delivered to all students. In addition to the standard curriculum, any students experiencing or perpetrating abuse is provided with additional education and support on a one-to-one basis. The Oldham Safeguarding Children Partnership Training Officer delivers online safety and healthy relationships assemblies to primary, secondary and FE students, which include elements of coercive control. In the last term, they delivered sessions to over 7,500 students. The secondary assembly offer for the 2023-24 academic year has been refreshed and will include a focus on teenage relationships, relationship abuse and adolescent stalking and harassment. This reflects issues requested by schools. During the last academic year, the partnership also launched a high-quality, happy and safe curriculum resource for primary schools. This is available on the partnership website and includes a lot of lessons that lay the foundation of understanding about coercive and controlling behaviour. Linked to this, as part of the 2023 White Ribbon Fortnight of Action, a conference is being held with young people on the 29th of November to develop peer leadership around promoting healthy and respectful relationships. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Byrne to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Get the right piece of paper. My question is again about road speed limits. During COVID, we were able to, on a national basis, to reduce town and village centres to 20 miles an hour. Whilst not popular at first, more and more 20 miles per hour have been requested and implemented. I was told some 4 years ago by a previous senior highways officer that there would be a study of all the speed limits on all the roads in the borough. This never took place as far as I am aware, and many roads in the Saddleworth wards without footpaths are still at the upper end of the national limit of 50 miles an hour and are used in excess of these speed limits. I've even presented petitions to lower the speed limits in these particular areas. I understand that more 20 mile per hour areas are to be proposed, but when can I expect a thorough study of other limits other than 20 miles per hour? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Goodwin to reply, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillor Byrne, for your question. The previous speed limit review for all 10 Manchester boroughs was led by TFGM. This review led to the creation of the policy for setting speed limits, which is in line with national policy. This is to ensure that there is a consistent approach in setting limits. Currently, speed limits are set based on collision data and in agreement with Greater Manchester Police. The TFGM-led Road Danger Reduction Group are currently reassessing the speed limit policy and the implementation of lower speed limits in the light of the ever-increasing use of the highway by non-motorised users. The existing temporary 20 mile an hour speed limits introduced in the Saddleworth villages were done so using temporary powers granted by central government during the COVID pandemic. Those powers expired in April 2022. There has been a long-standing request for a 20 mile an hour limit in the villages. Data shows that the signs have resulted in reduction in speeds. However, this has not led to full compliance. As and when funding becomes available, Oldham Council highways are changing COVID-era temporary measures to permanent physical restrictions. Linked to this, funding has been confirmed for traffic calming and permanent 20 mile an hour limit within the Upper Mill and Dobcross areas, which will be consulted upon in the next couple of months. It should be noted that Greater Manchester Police don't support the introduction of permanent 20-mile-an-hour speed limits without the physical measures to make them self-enforcing.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Kenyon to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Every ward in the Oldham Borough has been affected by the telecom mast installations by Ix Telecom. I'd be surprised if there was a councillor in this room who hasn't been contacted by a resident complaining about the eyesore of one of these new masts plonked outside their home with no consultation. Apart from a meeting with Ix Wireless and a trial supposedly starting in Chadderton soon, what have the council done? One of the key requirements is that all operators are required to explore site-sharing opportunities under the terms of their licences. What evidence does the council have from telecoms operators that this has been done for every proposed new mast location? If they have provided evidence, who, as a technical expert, has reviewed their justification? Which have been challenged, questioned or refused as a result? The code set out in Schedule 3A of the Communications Act 2003 prescribes the rights and responsibilities that telecoms companies have when installing new masts. So if we want to make a change to their procedures and the planning requirements, this means a change to the code and the Act. Nothing will change unless this is done. So, has the Cabinet member responsible written to the relevant Member of Parliament or Select Committee requesting that the Act is changed, and if so, when did they do it? Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Taylor to reply, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kenyon, for your question. The Council is aware of proposals by IX Wireless to roll out their infrastructure in the borough, utilising rights available to them through national planning legislation, meaning that some of it does not require approval from the local planning authority. These are known as permitted development rights. However, where masts are proposed to be erected under these rights, the operator must first obtain what is known as prior approval from the local planning authority. This requires them to make an application, and the local planning authority will then need to determine on a case-by-case basis whether their siting and appearance is acceptable or not. No other matters can be considered under this process. While such legislation exists, the Council must accept that operators such as IX Wireless have rights to install their infrastructure, albeit subject to compliance with any conditions contained within them. Council officers have ensured that IX Wireless are aware of these requirements. I am aware that some equipment has been installed in the form of poles to support wires in the Chadderton area. These have been assessed by officers and fall within the provision of permitted development rights. Where this is the case, as I said earlier, they do not require approval from the local planning authority. I can confirm that the leader, Councillor Chadderton, the former leader, Councillor Chadderton, wrote to the Secretary of State raising concerns about permitted development rights afforded to electronic communication operators, and I also share these concerns. In respect of the wider requirement for telecommunication code operators to adhere to their codes of practice, which includes a requirement to share sites where possible, I understand that this is a matter for Ofcom. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of that part of the meeting. We're moving on now to Cabinet questions. Next part of this section, questions on Cabinet minutes. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Taylor to second that the Council note the minutes of the Cabinet meeting as circulated.
Move, Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Second, Deputy Mayor.
Do any members who are not Cabinet members wish to ask questions on the Cabinet minutes? Councillor Harkness.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It is page 53, item 13, on the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, and it's around the impact that will have on an issue that Councillor Shah responded to on one of the public questions, which is around the proposed local ticket office closures. And I welcome some of the comments he's made already about the issue that's going to cause to some of the residents, and especially those who are elderly and disabled. and I do welcome some of the lobbying that she's already done. I wondered whether she might consider some additional lobbying as well. I've written a few down. She may have covered that. I didn't quite catch exactly which one she'd already written to. But I wondered whether we look at writing to the Chief Executive of the Rail Delivery Group. I think National Rail, I think you may have mentioned, but also possibly looking at referring this to Manchester B Committee as well to see if we can get their support as well on that, and perhaps see if she could maybe contact the MPs as well, see if they can also join in that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Shah to respond.
Yeah, that's fine. Really helpful suggestions. Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. With reference to the Cabinet minutes printed on page 43, item 10, the Town Centre Partnership, seeing as the old Coliseum site is part of this new Town Centre plan, how many new houses will be built on this site?
Councillor Shah.
As far as I know, there's no plans for that site.
Thank you. Councillor Hamblett.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. This is in relation to page 50, item 9. Can the respective Cabinet member please let us know, will the new tree framework, will it cover the massive weeds that also are big as trees now, that cover our roads and pavements and also practically block out the light? Thank you.
Thank you. Got a response for that one?
I'll respond to that one, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we know why the weed problem is. That was the contractor who pulled out of the tender. There was no fault of the council whatsoever, but the new contractor has been in place and is now actively treating the weeds across the borough since the 28th of August, and we expect them to be treated completely by the end of the year.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It's just a bit of clarification on that page 50, item 9, approval to award the tree surgery framework, and then on it tells us on page 56 at item 16 that it was resolved that the framework agreement is awarded to the 5 highest ranking bidders. Does that mean we've got 5 separate contractors, one for each district, or I can't quite work that out?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. It states in the report that any direct work would be awarded to the first rank bidder, and if the value of the work is above £5,000, it will be in a tender process for the 5 bidders that were successful.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Quigg.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I refer to page 47, item 4, public question time in relation to Councillor Alan Darney's question in regards to Oldham Athletic. I did write to the Chief Executive a good few months ago about the £1 million that Oldham Athletic received, and in particular there was a specific reference to how clawback would be initiated in the event of the contract or whatever agreement you've come to doesn't get fulfilled. Now, I've had representations by people in Royton in regards to having approached Oldham Athletic to use the community facilities that they wish, and have been declined. So just wonder whether the council will be monitoring the community activities and allowances, or whether or not they're all booked up already or not. Thank you very much, Madam.
Councillor Shah.
Well, I don't know how Councillor Quigg would expect us to know what the fixtures are and who's booked what and for how long, but the grant conditions are really clear in the report. If you've contacted them and they don't have availability, they just don't have availability. I don't think there's any malice, and I don't think it's that deep.
Thank you. No more questions on the Cabinet minutes? Thank you. Right, we're moving on to the administration business now. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Brownbridge to second the first motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The observant members in this chamber will have noticed that this is the third motion on social care that the Labour Party have brought here in the last 9 months, and that's because the entire sector is in crisis. Most Oldhamers probably don't know that 2/3 of this council's revenue budget is spent on social care, whether it be children's or adults. And the truth is that goes the same for any council up and down the country. We spend billions on social care every year, and most residents won't know that. And why should they if they up until the point that they want to receive or need to receive those services? But now we're starting to see the cracks appear in the system. We're starting to see that after years of making a profit, the impact of the pandemic has meant that some supposed care providers in the private sector are just walking away. They're giving up and they're saying that's not my problem anymore. And this is a ridiculous and scary position to be in. The whole purpose of us collectively organising ourselves into a society and forming a state is to look after one another. But for too many people, the state is failing them in their old age. The free market in the adult social care sector, and specifically care and nursing homes, as this motion talks about, is failing our residents who need society's care and support the most. Nothing, Mr Deputy Mayor, epitomises this issue more than the Council's recent acquisition of Total Care in Chadderton. Not long into my leadership this time round, our Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care, Councillor Barbara Brownridge, and our DAS, Jane Ratcliffe, came to me with a dilemma. Total Care was at risk of closing and leaving over 100 of Oldham's most vulnerable residents homeless with massive continuity of care issues. And I don't want to seem too insensitive here, Mr Deputy Mayor, but for many of these residents in the borough's second biggest care home, continuity of care means life or death. Both the financial and emotional cost of having to move these residents to alternative care homes and quite possibly miles outside of Oldham would have been huge, and it would have been cruel. There is no further safety net. There is no operator of last resort like there is for our rail network. There is no state-backed care organisation to meet these people's needs. And that's wrong. It just can't be right. That can't be who we are as a society, and it can't be who we want to be. So for me, it was an easy decision to make to acquire Total Care and for the council to become that safety net. And before I move on, I would like to thank our officers, Jane, Emma Barton, and Ryans, and our legal team for moving so quickly and ensuring that these 100 residents are safe and that 200 hard-working and dedicated social care staff didn't lose their jobs in the blink of an eye. So dedicated were those staff, by the way, that staff were paying for supplies out of their own pockets. But the honest truth is, we cannot afford to be the safety net for other care and nursing homes. These were exceptional circumstances, and I'm worried about what will happen if another care home fails in this borough. We're not naive. We know there's no quick fix to this. The level of reform we're talking about is huge, and the scale of the task is in front of all of us is huge, comparable to the establishment of the NHS in 1948. But as more of our residents live longer, the care they need and expect from society will increase, and the duty of the state to look after them will increase with it. The resolutions in this motion are about starting a journey that the adult social care sector needs to begin quickly. The government of the day may have abdicated all responsibility when it comes to actually governing, but the nation cannot wait for the next general election. We need reform, and we need it to begin now. And that's why Jane and her team have mine and my Cabinet's whole support in the work that they're doing with partners across Greater Manchester to look at how we can do our bit. But the ball is firmly in the national government's court, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brownridge.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So Councillor Shah has made reference to the current state of adult social care provision, and the events at Chadderton Total Care are a striking example of the problems in the sector. Years of underinvestment, not just in the public sector in general, but in social care in particular, have resulted in a provision which is arguably broken. A combination of an ageing population with increasingly complex needs, combined with local authorities being unable to meet the real costs of care, exacerbated by the cost of living crisis and an undervalued workforce whose crucial contribution throughout COVID seems to have been totally forgotten, has led to providers struggling to meet cost and unable to attract staff who can often earn more in a supermarket with less responsibility and a better work-life balance. Chadderton Total Care, unlike most of the country's provision, was run by an individual, and he was badly affected by rising costs. Difficulties in attracting staff, particularly nursing staff, who incidentally are paid less in the care sector than if they work in hospitals, meant the facility was operating at a reduced capacity, and that in turn affected his income. There was a real danger of closure, and this meant that patients, the majority of whom are Oldham residents, would have had to have been moved, and most of them would have had to have gone out of the borough. There's a shortage of nursing beds across GM. Most of those that are available are in areas that charge the highest fees. So this represented a perfect storm of job losses, reduced long-term provision of nursing beds, significant budget pressures, but most and worst of all, disruption to vulnerable people and to their families. The council was able to step in on this occasion because the accommodation available is compatible with the approach of the new target operating model and for the new way of providing care services, and is not a solution that will be available, and there have been already and will undoubtedly be provider failures going forward. The only long-term solution is for the government to face up to the need to fund the care of our elderly properly, not just by allowing local authorities to resources to meet the actual cost, but recognising the value of the work these carers in these facilities provide. And this is not just about paying them proper wages, but acknowledging that these are not low-skilled jobs, but should offer proper and respected career opportunities. I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I rise to speak on this motion, and firstly, I'd like to echo mine and my group's thanks to officers from adults and finance to make the magic happen in saving the jobs and all the residents and families with anxiety of having to find a new care home, which I know is in a very short supply to which they reside. I have actually personally visited Total Care, and it's a fantastic and warm place. I have a neighbour and a former colleague who now resides there, and he and his wife cannot praise the care that he receives enough. That was just the good bits. Our social care, though, as Barbara's alluded to, is in a frail and needs some serious TLC. Many face agonising waiting times for triaging and diagnoses from primary care before being passed back to social care, and the communication between the two at times have been found wanting. In late 21 and early 22, we all held our breaths for the long-awaited mythical social care white paper from government, but alas, 3 Tory Prime Ministers later and still nothing, with all ideas and aspirations dashed. Social care is still just about getting a small slice of the £5.4 billion over 3 years of the £30.3 billion raised by the health and social care levy, I should say, with the majority of the money going to the NHS, which is fine, that's all good. But still, it won't stop the need for those in the younger age brackets requiring intensive support, or even support for families who are facing crippling costs, as those with various disabilities, both visible and hidden, face heightened costs of their care, and especially when it comes to travelling to work, or, if required, particularly to our unpaid carers, as mentioned earlier this evening. They need support to help with the complexities of life and face the challenges of the everyday. And I agree with the sentiments on this motion, and the government need to be reminded of their once promises for reform and further asked to help with the ongoing recruiting crisis that would certainly be a step in the right direction. I would also add that greater scrutiny of the ICS would be helpful to ensure the right support is going to the right areas within GM, because I think that would also be a step forward, Mr Deputy Mayor, in the right places. So thank you, and I do support this.
Move to the vote, Deputy Mayor.
Second.
I've got Councillor Byrne who's indicated she wishes to speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The Conservative opposition recognise the acquiring of the total care home for use by the people of Oldham. Jobs will be saved and care will continue. and these are things that we rightly commend. However, we cannot fully support some of the resolution points. The next step to put people at the heart of care paper, published by the government, sets out that the reforms will soon be coming to the care sector, including a national care workforce pathway set to be published in the autumn. The government has only recently pledged 600 million nationally to help with recruitment and retention in social care, including more than 1.7 million in this final year alone to Oldham Council, in order to improve workforce pay, in order to address recruitment and retention, with even more set to be made available for next year, giving the Council more funding to improve access to care and support. This comes alongside £7.5 billion in investment in social care from the government and success of the Made with Care recruitment plan, which has seen the vacancy rate in the social care sector fall by 11% so far. There is more to do, we acknowledge, but the government has shown it is working to address the problems in the sector. This group will therefore be abstaining on the vote. Thank you.
Can we now move to the vote, please, Deputy Mayor?
Councillor Shah has got a right to reply, if she wishes.
I'd like to thank firstly Councillor Louis Hamlet for his comments and his contribution. And then it's true that we have been given some funds to support recruitment, as there is an absolute issue for the sector, but they have stalled many other reforms which need to be brought forward, and that's what the resolution asks for. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Does the Council agree the motion? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Okay, that is clearly carried. Thank you. We can now go on to motion 2. I call on Councillor Goodwin to move and Councillor Taylor to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I rise to move this important motion, no pun intended. As the motion states, there have been 31 sites identified in Oldham where raw sewage has been discharged into our rivers. This leads to pollution in our rivers, which is extremely harmful to both humans and wildlife. There is sewage overflowing into rivers in almost every constituency across England and Wales. Combined sewage overflows mix toilet sewage with rainwater and then discharge it into rivers, creating a horrible environment for fish and other creatures. It poisons them and the rivers die. In Oldham West and Royton and in Oldham East and Saddleworth, during 2022 alone, there were 1,242 sewage dumps in our rivers, lasting a duration of nearly 7,500 hours. All of this is taking place while private water companies like Unite Utilities make massive profits for their shareholders and fail to make the investment required to clean up their mess. In fact, they've announced customers will pay more in their bills rather than reduce dividends to their shareholders. Since the failed privatisation, water companies have run up net debts of almost £54 billion and paid out dividends of £65.9 billion, and we pay the interest on that debt. Because the UK water companies clothe themselves in a myriad of corporate structure, only one of which, the operating company, is regulated by Ofwat, they are able to pay out massive dividends, including internal dividends to their parent companies. £1.8 billion every year has been taken in shareholders' dividends. This represents £50 per household, or over 10% of our annual water bills. United Utilities have paid out £72 billion in investor dividends over the last few decades while failing to make the necessary investments. And water companies still intend to continue paying out hefty dividends while charging customers for improvements. And only 14% of rivers in England have good ecological status, and this figure could fall to just 6% by 2027. And what is the response we've had from the Tory government? Nothing. One of Oldham MPs, Jim McMahon, raised this issue in Parliament only for the Tories to vote against parliamentary measures to stop raw sewage being dumped in our rivers. We need action by the government to prevent this taking place, and we need the government to make sure that these private companies pay the cost and not already hard-hit customers. I urge you to support the motion.
I call on Councillor Taylor to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. As my colleague Councillor Goodwin has already pointed out, water pollution is a very serious issue for us all. It's an environmental hazard, it's a health hazard, and it's an economic hazard. And as we know from numerous reports, the shocking extent of sewage pollution that plagues our rivers up and down the country is nothing short of a national scandal. Here in Oldham, many of our residents, as well as local businesses and voluntary organisations, are quite rightly asking the question and raising their concerns about the health implications of the poor water quality of our rivers too. People are angry about this, and they have every right to be angry, because sewage treatment is itemised on every single one of our water bills, but it's not being delivered. Instead, water companies are being allowed to cut corners and dump sewage untreated. Of course, this situation may have been orchestrated by private water companies in an attempt to absolve any responsibility for dealing with the problem, but make no mistake, it has been enabled by this Tory government who have failed to properly regulate the industry for the past 13 years. Ofwat, the water regulator for England and Wales, has publicly criticised water companies for failing to invest enough in treatment plants to stop the overuse of raw sewage discharges. Yet many water companies routinely underspend their budget for improving the water and wastewater network. And the main areas of underspend are on improvements to sewage treatment works, storm tank capacity and reducing spill frequency. And the reason why these companies are not delivering the service improvements they were funded to deliver is because they are focused on extracting money to pay shareholders rather than looking after the long-term health of our waterways. In the absence of effective regulation, and since the Environment Agency's monitoring budget was slashed over a decade ago, dumping sewage in rivers has contributed to a spectacularly profitable business model, where our urban rivers have effectively become an extension of the sewerage network. The 2021 Environment Act, which now requires water companies to make data about the frequency and duration of sewage discharges publicly available by 2025, has a major loophole in that it doesn't compel these companies to issue discharge volumes. The absence of this reliable data on sewage dumping is a major problem, and if the plans to reduce sewage discharge are to be realised, we need to understand the quantity that is being pumped into our waterways. I find it farcical, given the vast profits these companies are making, that the recommendation from the Environmental Audit Committee's 2022 report on river pollution was ignored because the government argued it would be too expensive. As my colleague has already referenced, these companies have paid out £72 billion in dividends, and water bosses have enjoyed payments and bonuses of millions of pounds, so I find it very hard to believe that cost is at the heart of this. I also find it astonishing that water companies in England have a problem with collecting data to estimate sewage volumes when they routinely collect very accurate data on the volumes of drinking water supplied to millions of homes to calculate our water bills. People do need accurate information on what is happening to their local rivers so they can identify the worst offending discharge sites and hold water companies to account. While I welcome United Utilities' announcement to invest £230 million to upgrade wastewater treatment infrastructure on several rivers across the North West over the next 2 years, I find their statement, which claims it will reduce the discharge of untreated wastewater and sewage into the region's rivers by more than 10 million tonnes a year, or the equivalent of 4,000 Olympic swimming pools, a remarkable admission of sustained sewage dumping on a colossal scale. It also proves that water companies can, in fact, provide volume data when it suits them. We do need to make sure that water companies are properly scrutinised and that the government properly regulates the industry. We need better environmental protections, and we need them now. Please support.
Thank you. We have an amendment. I call on Councillor Quigg to move and Councillor Arnott to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It's a bit of a sixth form debate, this, because we've got two motions tonight. which talk about crap. You know, it is novel. This chamber does talk a lot of it, but you know, talking it twice tonight is.
Excuse
is
me,
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
There's no need for that. There's no need.
There's precedent, Mr. Mayor.
Let's
There is precedent, Mr. Mayor.
Let's stick to the subject.
I thought you might try this. The precedent I was referring to actually was Councillor Hudson, the former mayor of the council, actually using it and it being permitted. But there we go. The motion that's been presented, obviously the amendment that we put forward tonight, actually is there to look at the realities. You talked about water companies plural. Well, there's only one water company that covers Oldham, as far as I'm aware, which is United Utilities. And United Utilities, interestingly enough, yes, it is a private company. For most of my lifetime, has been a private company. But what's your alternative? You don't state what your alternative is in your motion. I've got no idea what you'd do to resolve the issue, except you want more monitoring. Well, fine, we'll have more monitoring. But when it was put into when it was put before Parliament, the Labour Party's proposals, the Labour Party didn't support them. So it got passed by the governing party, which was my own party, to get them through, but you couldn't support them in Parliament to change the law. So it is a bit hypocritical, to say the least. In addition, however, water companies, and I've decided to have a bit of a deep dive into United Utilities' financial arrangements, paid out on average around about 4% on on annual returns, so dividends. That is, in the pension industry, which I work in, a relatively steady and stable industry. Now, how many pensioners are you going to deprive if you want to nationalise that company? It's going to cost billions if you want to nationalise it, and where are we going to get the money from? In addition, I have to say, I've been to countries and visited them for a fair few weeks at a time, where they have varying models of ownership of water companies. And I've seen ones that are state-owned, ones that are municipal-owned, ones that are mixed public-private partnership, and they have the same problems. In fact, I'd say the state-owned ones, particularly in Spain...
Point of order, Deputy Mayor. Can I ask the member to speak to the motion, please?
I'm speaking to the amendment.
There is no...
Amendment, dear. Speaking to the amendment.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, because that was not an acceptable way to refer to another councillor.
Make your mind up, can I continue and get on with it? Or?
Let's speak to the amendment, please.
Well, I was speaking to the amendment, which obviously we're not, but, you know. And there's no alternative in the motion, hence why I've asked for the amendment. Now, the Labour Party said it was going to nationalise water, and it seems to have disappeared from all public view. There's no alternative to what's been put down. So if you're going to say there's a problem, what's the solution? And you haven't provided a solution. You're saying that there's an issue. Fine, we all agree there's an issue. But what is the solution to it? Now, the Liberal Democrats recently said stop all pollution into rivers now. But in order to do that, you have to have extra capacity. So what's your proposal? Let the muck come back up the drains? I mean, if that's the proposal, then clearly, you know, it's no wonder we've got problems.
Please stick to the motion. Now, you've moved on to the Liberal one now. So
I am sticking to the amendment, Mr. Mayor. If you let me continue, I'll conclude. Now, can I get my time back?
No, you're not getting your time back.
Why?
You have wandered off to the...
I'm still discussing the next bit.
You've moved on to the Liberal Dem motion.
I mean, this is impartiality, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is shocking. Shocking.
Right, we'll move on to Councillor Arnott to second the motion. Thank you.
Sorry, what's your ruling? Can you clarify? Because I don't quite understand what you just said.
Councillor Arnott to second the motion.
Why? Because you've interrupted. So if you'd allow me to get the time back, I might have concluded.
Councillor Quigg, please sit down.
Shocking, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely shocking.
Councillor Arnott to second.
Bucking up a bit, innit? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I rise to second the amendment to this motion and support all that Councillor Quigg has said. No one would wish to see our rivers and waterways polluted. They're a legacy that we leave to our children and grandchildren and should be protected in any and every way that we can. There is no doubt that the current situation is far from perfect, and there is no debate that United Utilities has not covered itself in glory either nationally or locally here in Oldham. I would genuinely love to say that I see merit and could support some of the points that the motion proposes, as I always try to do when responding to administration business. But there are no practical proposals or solutions suggested, and that is disappointing. Instead, the Labour group has chosen to take the opportunity to attack the government on a national issue over which it has no influence or control, but knows that is a topic that causes members of the public considerable and understandable concern. Short of detailing the levels of pollution found in the rivers Tame, Medlock and Irk, the motion barely mentions the local situation. It fails to consider or make comment on the £114 million United Utilities invested between 2014 and 2017 for a cleaner River Irk and building a new works at the Oldham wastewater treatment plant in Chadderton, or a new pipeline running from Royton to Chadderton to handle greater volume. The motion also misses the opportunity to press United Utilities on whether they have plans to expand the works in Chadderton and what capacity they would need in the future. This amendment addresses that shortcoming. Nowhere does the motion acknowledge the government's success in ensuring that 91% of all storm overflows are now fitted with monitors, that the storm overflows discharge reduction plan, published in August 2022, was backed by £56 billion worth of capital investment, the largest in water company history, or that over £140 million has been levied in fines since 2015. I don't seek to defend the record of United Utilities, and not for one moment do I think that the government has got everything right on this matter. But this amendment, like others we've laid before, seeks to provide some balance. For the sake of balance, it may be worth looking at the Labour Party's recent record. When our own Oldham, West and Royton MP put forward a bill earlier this year on measures to reduce water sewage discharges, the Labour Party incredibly abstained on their own bill, leaving it to the Conservatives to ensure that the proposals were passed. A moment that Mr McMahon, now the former Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, will surely wish to forget, perhaps as much as his television interview with Sophie Ridge a few weeks later. Only time will tell if the Labour Party keeps to its 2019 manifesto promise to nationalise water companies and how much that would cost taxpayers, or the impact that that would have on pension funds. Again, to provide balance, this amendment addresses and seeks clarity on that matter. The amendment balances, adds to and expands the motion, and I would urge councillors to support it. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Due to the time, we won't have a chance for any debate, so Councillor Goodwin, do you wish to reply to the amendment?
We will not be accepting the amendment. We didn't support the amendment that was referred to in Parliament, and these companies are not private companies in true form. They should have some competition, giving local people choice. They're a monopoly and they charge the residents for their failings. The resolutions that are in the motion would lead to the government requiring mandatory monitoring of sewage outwards and an increase in fines, which should lead to reducing sewage discharges.
Councillor Quigg, you have a right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, providing I'll be allowed to speak. It's very interesting, the extra competition. Yeah, I agree with that, we need extra competition, that's not a problem, as Councillor Goodwin's alluded to. But I will say that it is rather rich to say that in Parliament, where this motion should really be debated and where they have the power, was not supported by the Labour Party nor the Liberal Democrats. It's telling that there's nothing local about the motion, hence why I put the amendment down. And I have to say, you have to be careful where you store sewage, because if you store it near people's houses, then people there will have a very, very strong right to complain, because no matter how much treatment you put it through, there is a residual smell. And if you've lived near the Chadderton sewage treatment works, there is a waft that does occasionally run across the area, and it has to be said that again, you haven't put in the motion what local solutions we could offer. And this is the telling thing. Everything you've put in down tonight is a letter writing exercise. I've got nothing to do with local issues, nothing that we here in this council can resolve. It's passed up to Parliament, the Chief Exec writes another letter like Harry Potter, and then we could get a letter back, and then we're back to square one. No resolutions delivered for this council, no resolutions delivered for the people of Oldham. And this is the problem with this administration. It puts down national issues and not local issues. And if we really want to address that, then we need to start looking at local solutions, such as where we're going to have these extra treatment works, where we're going to store the waste, where these places are going to be, especially if we're, even in the amendment I mentioned, we're building more houses, so naturally it means more.
We're getting to the end of this time now.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I've still got time, and you've interrupted yet again. This is unacceptable.
It's 30 minutes on this section, and we're coming to the...
If you want to conclude, then tell me to conclude.
Conclude.
Stop interrupting.
Can we cease, please? And we're moving on to the vote. Sorry, thank you. So we're moving on to the vote now, the vote for the amendment. So does the council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Clearly that is lost. Thank you. So now we move on to the main part of the motion, and we're going straight to the vote on this. So those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? That is clearly carried. Thank you. So we now move on to the opposition business, and it's, I call on Councillor Woodbine to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I rise to propose this motion and put on public record my continued support and campaign for a state-of-the-art health centre for all of Saddleworth. In doing so, I am repeating the requests of the people residing in our civil parish, who I am proud to represent. This is something my Conservative colleagues and I have consistently raised with residents and stakeholders for numerous years, and indeed for Councillor Sheldon, who is seconding this motion, this is not the first time he has discussed this at full council. However, our calls for a health centre have fallen on deaf ears countless times, despite the overwhelming public support in Saddleworth, which I reference in the motion. I acknowledge that my commentary is anecdotal, but our aim is to bring this issue to the forefront of debate in the borough and bring it to a conclusion, hopefully a positive, bipartisan one, which puts our people first. The leader of the council is aware of this ongoing saga, but I will give her the benefit of the doubt as she has had a short sabbatical from the council. Since her return, however, there has been no efforts made to engage us as the elected members for Saddleworth to move it forward. This is a systematic issue with Oldham Council, and the NHS has also acknowledged the lack of direction provided by this council's so-called senior leadership. In late 2022, the Chief Accountable Officer for the Integrated Care System, covering Oldham, said he was not entirely convinced that Oldham has got the right level of resource allocation for its needs and its population and its complexities. And we're going to need to fight for that, and we're going to need the politicians to get involved with some of that. The very same gentleman said he was acutely aware that Saddleworth needs a health centre similar to that which has been provided for the township of Crompton. I do not believe that resources are a stumbling block, and this is certainly not the signal I have received from the NHS when I have discussed it with them, but of course it would need a site, and various have been considered, including the leisure centre on Shaw's Lane. In having our own health centre, I would hope this would alleviate pressure from Central Oldham services, and it's fair to say none of us really mind where it's built, as long as it's in a central, accessible location for all of Saddleworth's residents. Following from her latest announcements, the leader of the council may wish to keep the old Saddleworth school site available for the Eton College campus in Oldham, and I'm sure I speak for my Saddleworth colleagues in saying that we would very much welcome this investment. However, returning to the matter at hand, our request is simple. Please put a health centre for Saddleworth at the top of the priority list and keep those of us who are elected to represent the area in the loop and up to date with any progress. This motion is quite timely too, as the integrated care system confirmed only a month ago that a review of utilisation of estate and assets alongside a supply and demand review were almost complete. This will assess viability and commence a business case for it. Therefore, this is an ideal time for us all to meet, consider the findings of the review and move this forward once and for all. The NHS have confirmed in its correspondence to us that they are committed to investing the time and energy into trying to do so. The question now, Mr Deputy Mayor, is this Council willing to do the same? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I am proud to second this motion this evening. The need for a health centre in Saddleworth is unfortunately long overdue, and I hope that Council will endorse this motion tonight to finally correct this imbalance in services within the borough. Our residents in Saddleworth are having to travel significant distances for routine and basic treatments. This adds unnecessary inconvenience for many and for some who do not drive. I recently attended Glodick Health Centre for when you get to 65 you have to go and have these tests, and it took me about 10 minutes to get to Glodick, but for those who use public service it is really a hard journey. A health centre in Saddleworth would help to relieve this pressure, giving residents a much more local service that is better suited to their needs. I would like to address some of the amendments that are being proposed to this motion from the administration. Most of the changes being proposed do not substantially amend the motion, which is something that I welcome, but seem to be more of a damage limitation exercise from the administration, passing the buck and attempting to absolve the blame from both themselves and the MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth as to why there has been no movement on this. The council leader and the chief executive attended Upper Mill a couple of years ago and looked at the site of the old Saddleworth School and agreed that this could be used for mixed use. So the site we have proposed, the old Saddleworth School site, I'm hopeful that this land can be used not just for a much needed health centre but for further development in the borough as well, such as the new Eton College and housing development. The site is also located towards the centre of Saddleworth and is thus in a prime location to be the most accessible to our residents. I hope that the Council will support this motion that we have put forward and finally deliver the health centre that is desperately needed in Saddleworth. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Some members have already indicated they wish to speak, but first of all we have the amendment. So I'm going to ask, call on Councillor Bramridge to move and Councillor Marie Bashforth to second the amendment.
Thank you. As Councillor Sheldon says, we don't actually quarrel with the thrust of this amendment at all. We entirely accept the need for a new health centre, although we might say that there's other parts of the borough that are equally pressing need and don't have the provision that they deserve. The amendment's intended to make it very clear that the Council and the MPs do not have a direct influence over this. This is a matter for the NHS. We are happy and we have been in discussions with them about this and will continue to do that. We also think it's unwise at such an early stage in the process to actually sterilise land for something that is not timetabled or been agreed, and that would obviously be reassessed once this goes into some programme and we'd have a definite timetable. But we fully accept the principle that there's a health centre needed in Saddleworth as well as in other parts of the borough. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Marie Bashforth.
I second the amendment, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? And I've had one member indicate, Councillor Harkness.
Yes, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. We welcome the proposals for a new Saddleworth Health Centre. It's nice to see the Conservatives now support this. This is not a new proposal, and it's been brought up many times before. I've raised this issue about 5 times. John McCann has, Howard Sykes, Sam, Derek Heffernan. And so the Liberal Democrats have been campaigning for a new health centre for about 8 years, including meetings with officers, the NHS, writing letters, petitions, lobbying the NHS, and we continue to do so. In fact, we met with the NHS quite recently. The Liberal Democrats have also proposed for a new health centre being cited and citing finances on many occasions over many years. Both Labour and Conservatives are opposing these over many years too. So a new health centre is needed and access to more services is needed more locally. But it won't address the chronic shortages of GPs available, and the blame here firmly lies with the Conservative government. Latest NHS figures which show that the number of GPs has fallen by 1,000 since the Conservatives pledged to recruit 6,000 more GPs in 2019. So we want waiting times, when we see waiting times rising, but we see the Conservative government have been at war with nurses, junior doctors and consultants, and now we see GP numbers falling rather than rising. They need to do, what they need to do is challenge their government over the mismanagement of the NHS, otherwise we ain't going to get any better services. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hince, views on the amendment?
On the motion, I'd like to speak.
Right, oh no, it's on the amendment at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Shah.
So I'd start to say I hope that the amendment hasn't been brought because Councillor Sheldon had to go to Glodwick once. But I do, yeah, I don't know whether that had scared you off and you didn't want to venture into Glodwick again. But no, on a serious note, we do support a health centre in Saddleworth, but it isn't our decision, and that's where the issue lies. The irony of somebody bringing a motion that is a decision that's not just out of the borough's control, but you know, a national decision after the horror that Councillor Quigg just showed to the motion on the disgraceful local pollution of our rivers, which is, you know, makes this amendment quite hypocritical. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I fully support this. And of course, the Labour Party has always supported this. And I think that you really need to smell the coffee. Because in 2010, there was proposals for the continuing development of health centres. And there was 3 proposed, one in Shaw, one in Chadderton and one in Saddleworth. And the land was already banked at that stage. But what happened in 2011? All the money was withdrawn by the coalition government, mainly run by the Tories and supported by the Liberal Democrats. So we've always supported this. I'm afraid your government hasn't. I hope the government, through the NHS, supports this latest initiative.
Okay, and one last speaker on the amendment.
Point of personal explanation, please, Mr Deputy Mayor. Can we just be quite clear, the Shaw Health Centre was axed by the Labour government before the 2010 general election, and that's well documented. There's both council documents and other documents I'm happy to furnish Councillor Dean or anybody else with that clearly state that is the case. Let's just keep it on the facts, shall we? Thank you. Please, Mr Deputy Mayor.
I think a personal explanation would be, well, I actually, through the PCT, who was actually leading on that, those particular issues, and I was leading on behalf of the PCT, and that was the position till the government actually withdrew the money.
Okay, yeah. Okay. One last speaker on the amendment, Councillor Bishop.
Thank you. Obviously, I support the motion being brought as all Saddleworth.
Sorry, motion or the amendment?
Sorry, the amendment. No, I'm not. We're not supporting. Yeah, obviously, I support the motion, not the amendment.
Let's be clear. Is it the motion or the amendment?
Right, Saddleworth has faced an alarming lack of basic healthcare provision for many years now, with the situation having been amplified since COVID. I speak regularly to residents totally frustrated trying to get a GP appointment, but also to those who are having to travel miles to access even the most basic outpatient services. For older people and those without private transport, this presents many barriers to getting the healthcare they need. Whilst the Council is not responsible for the delivery of health services, nor the lack of GPs being recruited and trained, it will be a necessary partner in the process of securing a new health centre for Saddleworth, given that they will be the likely owner of any potential site. For this reason, it is really important to hear support for one in the Chamber. A purpose-built health centre in Saddleworth will provide a facility from which to enable vital services such as the diabetes clinic, blood services, urgent treatment, and hopefully this is something that will be flagged up by the reviews currently underway, as mentioned before. This is something that all Saddleworth councillors agree on, regardless of political affiliation, because it's the right thing to do for our residents. The only thing I do disagree on is the Eton College on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodbine, you've got a right to reply, if you wish, to the amendment, of course.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Dean for being the Council's resident broken record. It's quite clear that the administration's answer to my simple question about being willing to do the same, put the same effort in as the NHS, the answer is no. In their amendment, the administration, true to form, have resigned all responsibility, and it shows how out of depth holding the health and social care portfolio Councillor Brownridge really is. Once again, the Labour Party are putting their own self-importance first and the people of Saddleworth last. Much like our mysterious MP, who has been missing in action for the most of this parliamentary term. When she returned from her aforementioned sabbatical, the leader of the council promised to introduce a system of district councils which our communities felt they could identify with. Well, it's needless to say, nobody I represent identifies with East. The past week, she issued a statement on 100 days since she returned to office, in which she said she wants to improve the quality of life in Oldham. Well, it's quite clear that that is not true. The direction and tone she is setting behind closed doors is very different, and it's displayed by her colleagues' total disregard shown to the Saddleworth community. In her statement, Councillor Shah hails her greatest success to date, her flagship plan to turn Oldham into a futuristic dystopian slum. If this is the best she can do, then Oldham is definitely doomed. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Mr Deputy Mayor, I don't understand what Councillor Woodwine is actually saying. I did agree with supporting the healthcare in Saddleworth. It just sounded like a pre-written reply that he couldn't then fathom changing based on the responses that we made, but we didn't say the Labour administration hasn't said they wouldn't support a health centre in Saddleworth, so I don't know where that's come from.
Deputy Mayor, it's just come from all the contributions spoken by our colleagues. They all said, each and every one of them who spoke said, it's not the council's responsibility. Well, the NHS doesn't have the...
They said it's not the council's responsibility to provide a health centre, but they said they support having one in Saddleworth, because it's not. We can't lie.
On this.
Feel free.
Brownridge has got a right to reply to the amendment.
No, I've got nothing else to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Does the council agree with the amendment? Those in favour? Those in favour? To agree the amendment, this is the vote on the amendment. Those in favour? Okay. Can you keep your hands up? I think we need to have a count, possibly. 31, yeah. Okay. Those against? And abstentions? The motion, the amendment is carried. Thank you. We're going back to the amended motion. Yeah, we're going back now to the substantive motion as amended. And Councillor Hince wishes to speak on this, I believe.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think we're all in favour of new health centres being built. Finally, I know it's took longer than the pyramids, but we're currently in the process of getting one in Shaw. But ultimately, they're just bricks and mortar. So I was very interested to hear about what Councillor Woodvine had to say about engagement. Engagement with, I just want to clarify, it's my understanding there's an existing health practice in Saddleworth, and obviously there are various others. Have you had any engagement with that with that practice or any other regarding who's actually going to facilitate running it? Thank you.
Thank you. We're running short of time now, but Councillor Woodvine has got a right to reply to the amended motion now. That's.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to clarify.
Sorry, could you keep it brief as well, because we are short on time.
All I'll say to conclude, Mr Deputy Mayor, is that the NHS and GPs will not want to work in a borough with the direction and leadership that's shown from this council, and that's the crucial problem in this. So carry on being negative about Saddleworth and Oldham, but this is the problem.
So now we're going to vote on the substantive motion as amended, yes. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? The amended motion is carried. Thank you. We move on now to another motion. I call on Councillor Alamdani to move and Councillor Williamson to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I listened with interest to Councillor Arnott's comments on the earlier motion when he commented on how important it was to save rivers, how it was preserving them for the next generation, how much we should do to protect them. Unfortunately, that is not currently the case. It does seem to be almost a concerted attack on our rivers from the current government. He also said that United Utilities haven't covered themselves in glory. I don't really want to say what United Utilities have covered themselves in, but I am going to, because we talk around this an awful lot, and we talk about sewage overflow.
Point of order, Mr. Can we address this to could everybody play at this one, or is it just me and Sam? Oh.
Shall I carry on, Mr Deputy Mayor?
Yes, please.
If possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. We talk a lot about sewage overflow, and what we're actually talking about is human waste. Human excrement going into rivers, and that is a disgusting concept, and the fact that this government has said that they're okay with this to continue until 2050 is just unacceptable. I can't believe we live in a society where the government just thinks that that is an acceptable thing to do. It's totally inconceivable that that should be something that we could pretend is okay. And the amendment that came earlier, the discussion that came with it, suggested that this was all in hand. 27 years of human excrement in rivers. That's what we're going to continue with unless we change things. The motion, and I think the important thing that is different to our motion than to the motion that came before, is talking about the polluter pays principle. And that is a really important thing, because we've seen dividends carrying on being paid. We've seen that the government has said that the money's going in to stop this isn't going to change that situation. At the moment, taxpayers are going to fund this. And it's not just with this sewage situation. So this week, the government says are going to be allowed to pollute rivers. And the taxpayer is going to pick up the bill. And a government spokesperson was asked, is that the case? Is the taxpayer going to pick up the bill for the developer's pollution? And they said, yes. I mean, of course, the polluter pays principle is very important. We just said yes, that it's taxpayers and not the polluter that's going to pick up that bill. It's a disgrace. This government is a disgrace. And this motion should be passed. I'm glad the previous motion was passed. And this government should hold its head in shame. So Theresa Coffey said she did give an asterisk T. Well, this government clearly doesn't, and our rivers are covered in it. It's a disgrace.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
I'll just follow that. Flipping heck. No, I swear, but I'm not going to swear, I promise. I would like to support my colleague Sam. I can't sit down. Sorry. I know, I can't sit down. It doesn't sound right to me. I'm really sorry. Yeah, I would like to support my colleague Sam. There is no point in repeating what he said, even though people might want me to. But I'd like to say that I am extremely concerned about the images I've seen in the media. As a Crompton Ward Councillor, I'm extremely worried about the raw sewage which I have seen around and about firsthand. That is why I've written to both United Utilities and the Environment Agency to seek reassurances that we have no such issues in the area, and if anything is found, it is rectified as soon as possible. It is more important than ever that we value our waterways, which ultimately end up in the seas. What we want to see is action. We don't need to pay lip service to statistics. We can see it all around us. We want actions, not words. We will make sure those people that are accountable can be held accountable. And that is why I am seconding this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Charters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was planning to speak on the Labour motion, but I'm very happy to speak supporting the Liberal Democrat motion, especially as it does follow some of the things we were asking for. Our motion actually did ask for United Utilities to pick up the bill. I note that Councillor Quigg thinks that we didn't ask for anything, but we did. It's a disgrace, really, that we've got these literal poo going into rivers. I went for a walk down in Moorside along the River Medlock the other day, down to Strinesdale. It's the sort of the 3-point between my ward, Fadderworth North, and Waterhead. It's a lovely place. You've got lots of animals, lots of lovely countryside, and yet potentially flowing through there is human waste, which is ridiculous. I think that we should all support this motion, and I think anyone who votes against it, well, they know what they can put in their water.
Right, nobody else wishing to speak, so right. Oh, sorry, Councillor Arnott, missed you there in the corner. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just make? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Can I just make a point that these benches aren't the central government, but by all means, frame a motion which outlines your dissatisfaction with policy that the central government may have. Present a resolution, take a vote on it, have a rant if you necessarily have to. But these benches here are not the central government, and this is not the central government. It's easy to sit and criticise, but simply standing up and ranting and pointing your finger at me, don't do it again. It is no value to anyone. It doesn't achieve anything. If you're unhappy with something, formulate a motion, put down a motion, and we'll vote on it, yes or against it. But standing up here and attacking these benches as if we're the central government, it does nobody any good. It makes you feel a little better. You might get a little bit of a clap. But let's have some realism in what can be achieved by people in this chamber and what can't be achieved, what can be influenced, what can't be influenced. So that's all I'm asking, is a little bit of reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hamblett.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I wasn't necessarily going to speak, but is it not that the Conservative opposition benches are local representatives of the government of the day? So therefore, if that is so, then surely they should write letters to the government of the day and the ministers of the day, therefore showing their right dissatisfaction of the current state of our waterways as we are. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Mr Deputy Mayor, please can I have a point of personal explanation? If that was really the case, Councillor Hamblett, surely you would have more seats than us on this council. I think the government must be very popular considering we are the official opposition.
Oh, can we sit down, please? Right, okay then. Councillor Alandami, do you wish to reply?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think most of the debate has been in favour of the motion. I appreciate that when I'm shouting at the Mr Arnott, you're not, Councillor Arnott, you're not a member of central government. It was merely that your words in the earlier debate were particularly apposite for pointing out the hypocrisy of this government.
Point of order, Mr Deputy Mayor. Could I ask
what? Point of order.
Could I ask what apposite means, please? Thank you.
Moving to the vote now. So, does the council agree the motion? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 11. Actions from the council. Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the report on actions from council.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Alandami.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I just had a couple of questions, really, with regards to the report. I noticed that there was a motion on fireworks that was passed previously. In the previous report, it indicated that a letter had been written to the appropriate Department of Government and no response had yet been received. It's now disappeared from the report with no information about whether a response had been received or not. And also on pages 73 and 75, it refers to Appendix 2 and Appendix 3 of the report, but there's only an Appendix 1. There's 2 replies which actually have been received that we're told we've got. They're not in the report. It'd be nice to have the information, please.
Those reports will be circulated to all members.
I suppose it's on a similar vein, Mr Deputy Mayor. There's a significant number of here where there's no responses. I'd just like a bit more commentary next time that we've actually reminded people. I do think it's really poor that we wait months and months and months. You know, do we just send one letter and ignore it, or do we chase it up or whatever? It'd be useful to say no reply today, but we've written to them 3 times now. Or, if we have a whip round, we can buy them some new pigeons and then maybe they can reply.
Thank you. Does Council agree the recommendations as detailed within the report? Thank you. Item 12, constitutional amendments. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the report.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Quigg.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it's very much a case of blink and you'll miss in terms of item 12, but public questions in item 12 is being reduced from its 30 minutes to 15 minutes. And given that we've had several council meetings where members of the public have felt aggrieved that their questions haven't been addressed, I would have thought it would have been more appropriate to keep the 30 minutes rather than reducing it to 15 minutes and reducing public participation in meetings, which seems to me anti-democratic in the very least. I mean, we might be having to rename constitutional services to anti-democratic constitutional services because, at the face of it, this is absolutely shocking that we're reducing it to 15 minutes where basically nobody will get a question in, and we've seen at least 25 questions at some council meetings and many of them unanswered.
I think Councillor Shah would like to respond.
Well, I can do, but it was an organisational meeting. But full council can sometimes, as demonstrated clearly tonight, become a theatrical event, one that's removed from the reality of the work that this council does every day. These changes are designed to make sure that full council meetings are focused on the things we actually do for our communities, the services we deliver and commission. The report has been agreed, I would like to say, so if Councillor Quigg would listen to this next part, by the leaders of the three main political groups who represent, so including your leader, who represent 43 out of 60 members in this chamber. The procedure rule amendments are designed to make sure we're focused here on the things that bring us into line with other local authorities in Greater Manchester. There will be an enhanced opportunity for backbenchers to ask questions to Cabinet members, with Cabinet regularly bringing update reports to full council on issues within their portfolio. And members of the public can ask any of us here questions at any time, any day, via email, and they can raise issues with their own ward councillors and raise them here as their representatives. That's the way representative democracy works. There's nobody who's trying to limit that. There's an opportunity to do that every single day, not just at full council, but obviously some colleagues only attend full council meetings and put on a display here, and they actually are absent when it comes to anything else that's to do with representing residents.
So, Mr Deputy Mayor, just a point of personal explanation. Councillor Shah says that it's somehow enhancing democracy, but you're reducing the time limit. Now, I've spoke to colleagues in Bolton, and as far as they're aware, public questions is allowed for as long as there are many public questions are submitted. So it seems to me Oldham seems to always be the leader in going backwards and not forwards.
We've always had limited time for public questions, so I think Councillor Quigg is confused. Maybe the Constitutional Services could do a one-off session.
Well, this isn't a debate now, so do Council agree the report? One against. Two against. Okay. It's agreed anyway. Item 13, Youth Justice Plan. I call on Councillor Mushtaq to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the report.
Move the report, Deputy.
And Councillor Charters to second the report, is it?
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, you said Councillor Sheldon at first.
I did say that.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree the recommendation? Item 14, Treasury Management Review 22-23. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Shah to second the report.
Move, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Second, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? That concludes the business for this meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
You did a real good job. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I hope you've well chaired.
And there you have it. Public questions reduced to 15 minutes. Lewis Quigg spoke out. I think 2 people voted against it. I think Lewis Quigg and Mark Hince. Graham Sheldon voted with it, as demonstrated by AROOJ SHAH, because that's her fallback option. So AROOJ SHAH joined in, Graham Sheldon joined in, and this is tyranny. This is nothing other than tyranny. The removal of public questions, reduction of public questions, nothing short of tyranny. This is a council out of control. This is a council that is desperate to silence me because I facilitate this. And I think based on what I'm doing and how we are operating, it's only a matter of time before they try to sue me or take me to court, and this will be the council using your money, And I think it's only a matter of time. If they haven't already, they'll have gone back running to the police to try and have me arrested again, because I brought to your attention yesterday that the reduction to 15 minutes. Because if I hadn't brought it to your attention, it would have been completely missed. The saddle of Conservatives, as you can see, are complicit. The Lib Dems were always partners. And the Lib Dems actually should have been speaking out, because it was the Lib Dems who introduced public questions. And once again, another council meeting where Councillor Hurley had absolutely nothing to say, whilst her, well, I don't know what he is, what his official role is, whilst her advisor watched on from the public gallery. My name is AROOJ SHAH. With a bit of luck, I will see you on Sunday evening. I hope you enjoyed this live watch along. By the end of it, I'll just check. 340 of you joined over the course of this evening. Take care. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.